Meeting 6, I will call to order the September 8th meeting of the Swansea Planning Board here at Whitcomb Hall. I'll begin with the roll call. Scott Snow, that's me, I'm here. Michael York.
Yeah.
Jane Johnson.
Here.
Michael Day. Not here. Brandon Sell.
Here.
Richard Lane.
Here.
And Ken Colby. And Steve Malone.
Here.
I will seat Steve for, let's see, Michael Day. And our agenda this evening is under applications and public hearings. Planning Board number 22-017. This is a site plan review application. This is a continued public hearing from July 28th. Jonathan Holden has submitted a site plan review application to make improvements to the Lanefield property owned by the town of Swansea, located at 120 South Road and shown at tax map 24 lots 2-1 and 4. And the subject property is located in the residential district. And under discussions and other business, we had a letter of support that the Swansea Planning Board will be giving in support of a sidewalk, probably giving if they vote for it, in support of a sidewalk in Swansea Center, an extension there. And we'll be discussing site plan review regulations as it has to do with aquifer protections and zoning ordinance amendments for 2023 and any other business as may be required. And let's see, we don't need a regional impact because there's nothing new on the agenda. We don't need that. The minutes of August 25th, 2022. Does anyone have any corrections, changes, comments? If not, a motion to approve as submitted is in order.
Second.
Motion by Michael York to approve the minutes of August 25th, seconded by Brandon Self. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, before we get started, we have a lot of people here tonight, so anyone who wants to speak, would you just give your name and try and spell your last name at least a little bit for our recorder, just so you know the acoustics kind of bad in here. So just before you speak, just give your name for our recorder. And also planning board members, we got to speak up a little bit so everybody back there can hear us. Okay, so I will actually, I don't have to open it because we continue public hearing. We'll go right on to the site plan review application for Jonathan Holden has submitted the site plan review application to make improvements to the Lanefield property owned by the town of Swansea, located at 120 South Road and shown at tax map 24 lots 2-1, 4. And the property is in the residence district. So who's going to make the presentation?
So we were here in July, lengthy conversation for an hour or so, and we discussed at length the town's planning board desire to have a master plan for the project to be done over the next year or two, depending on how funds go. And I think in front of you is all seeing what is proposed on the right. Across from me would be what it is today, and to the left is what is proposed blown up based on your desire to see on the detailed parking. At this point in time, I'll let Chad Brandon, the principal of Fieldstone Land Consultant, address any questions or go through it. But you would ask specifically at the last meeting to have all parking outlined. That was basically the aspect that you would ask for. And I believe it comes out to, not mistaken, about 196 pages. That are delineated for parking.
Okay.
So if you take that parking as proposed from what is currently delineated today and what we have for parking today, you have about 50% approximately.
Okay.
Give or take how people park on grass, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get it. Still let Chad handle the discussion, but I know your aspect was that you wanted all the parking delineated.
Yep. Showing exactly where it's going to be. Right.
And the only other comment that I have is that I know there's been a lot of discussion between the Swansea town personnel today, yesterday, with regards to this road in the middle. And I don't know what Sarah has, you want to say anything about that, but I know the fire department, as well, which is Eric Matson, who's in charge of that, but Joe DeRusso is in charge of public works, have come to an agreement that they'd like to get rid of the road. My understanding can go to grass only. from the gate here to the gate here. So there'd be no road going through the middle. And it's the way the surfaces, the soil there, everything's fine, they had to get on in was to drive on, and likewise the safety. That was the only conversation I know that came through, the phone call tonight about 5 o'clock from Joe.
Okay,
Let Sarah address it, let me know.
Yeah, I can confirm that. They're fine with the road as it's presented, and they're fine with the road not being there as it was initially presented in July, where it cuts off right in the middle, so long as no structures are placed within a fire lane, essentially, so that emergency access is always available. It doesn't need to be hard packed roads.
so still just to clear it up, then that road per se is going to be there for vehicles to go through for emergency vehicles and so on and so forth. It's just that it will not be not paved or hard packed or whatever you're going to put on it. And those parking spaces that shows at the end of it, aren't those parking
No,
spaces?
they will stay there.
They will be there. Okay, will that be hard packed? It's that part, and then they'll just stand right there and then over here. And I see you have a proposed gate right there. Is that going to remain there?
Yes, the gates will be done, will remain there.
All right, and I got to see, you're up to make a presentation here, or any other questions, or
I'd be like, happy to do the brief.
yeah, would you go over it, please, yeah, for the public and for us?
For the record, good evening. My name is Chad Brandon, civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Controls. We've been asked to work on a master plan, kind of a master conceptual plan for the Swansea fields. I will tell you that I have personal experiences with these fields, as both of my kids have had a benefit of being in this facility for many years. I was an active participant coaching at this facility. So when I was asked to take a look at, let's look at the master plan for the facility and contemplate, improvements for maintenance and safety issues. I had a lot of discussions with Mr. Hoden relative to a number of experiences that I had firsthand on site, and a number of conversations and feedback that I've heard from neighbors surrounding the facility with some concern. So and honestly, all of our recommendations are incorporated within this plan. I think this plan will provide a great improvement to the future youth generations for sport, but also will be a great improvement to safety for certainly residents in neighboring homes. So taking a look at this plan, as Mr. Hoden said, this plan here is essentially an existing conditions plan of the property. Currently, the property has a number of fields. You have Open Field, Chandler Field, Lane Field, and Cole Field here, and then O'Brien and Westfield on the north side of the site. The parking at this site has really, been a challenge, I think, for many years, where people will park along the center corridor where there's a lot of activity, kids walking, people parking, games exchanging, and then a lot of times there's actually fly balls, home runs that'll find their way into that area. So people will on occasion try to avoid parking in that area. And what happens is, this gravel parking area down here is often full, and then you get a lot of parking along Mill Lane. So the goal of the plan, the improvement plan that we have in front of you, the proposed master plan, is to really try to solve a lot of the parking dynamics. And this plan certainly shows more parking than we would anticipate as a need, but it's a utilization of space to try to ensure that we're not going to have an ongoing parking issue. So taking a look at this plan, what we're proposing here, and you can kind of compare from the existing condition plan, we're proposing to remove lane fields and to expand the parking for the facility along South Road. The reason for that proposal primarily is this is where the traffic is coming and exiting from the site, so it makes sense to give somebody an arrival, a safe arrival, and keep them away from all of the activity, all of the teams practicing, all of the coaches, and just any kind of activity that's going to occur where somebody's attention span is challenged. You try to get the vehicles to come and enter the facility here. It also addresses, frankly, an existing safety issue with lane fields that I think anybody who's had the ability to use this great complex can see, where Lane Field is so close to the highway and the bleachers are situated essentially on the highway, and people watching games are there, and often you'll see a car pull off to the side of the road and try to watch a game. And that's not a great place for anybody to be parking, and it's not a great place for foul balls, because the first instinct of a child that's watching a game that sees a foul ball roll across the road is to go after it. And we've often talked about that, so we try to incorporate an improvement that would solve, a potential, safety issue there. Certainly none of us would recover from seeing a child injured along South Road, so.
Guys going 30 miles an hour.
Would you please
All right.
just hold your comments until he's done with his presentation? You'll have plenty of time to talk.
So this is the appropriate location for parking. The other parts of this design are facility improvements, which really consist of trying to limit access through the site and limit parking along the perimeter of the site. So if you look at along South Road and kind of tying in up to the existing access off of Putt Drive, what we're proposing is the construction of a split rail fence along the border of the site. That split rail fence will have some no parking signs on it. I think it's in everybody's interest to not see any kind of conflicts along South Road parking wise, people backing out on the road, things of that nature. So that, that kind of hard fence, if you will, should stop that from occurring. We're also proposing that same style fence along Mill Lane here to prevent any parking along this section of Mill Lane. Try to keep all the activity on site. So you would still have the spectators and stuff in the bleachers here. You still have obviously the teams approaching the field and utilizing this area on site, but you wouldn't have the traffic, the parking, and so it starts to control the activities on the property. Coming in on Putt Drive, we are maintaining the existing parking on both sides here, but what we've done is we've shifted that parking up so that there's no parking occurring along the shared access portion with lot 24-2-3 to try to make sure that there's no conflicts or issues with that home that takes access in that location as well. As you come into the site, we have the existing maintenance building here. Obviously have to have access to that for supply deliveries and the board, Swan Cal Ripken board often meets in that building, so we have to have some parking, for that. And then we would gate this center access aisle, and it's my understanding now that we may look at other alternatives for the surface for that treatment for that aisle as well, and then there'd be a gate here. So this would be really a corridor for pedestrian activity. What we envision is somebody entering the facility and parking here. You would walk through a gate. There's the nice pavilion, concession stand, and then you could go to all the fields. And this area would be unimpeded by traffic, certainly during any of the games. And then we have a small parking area here that we want to maintain. For those who need to get close to the fields, it's important to have some reserved spaces and some ability for handicap spaces as well. We're not proposing to change the use of this property. I mean, it's been a great facility for many years, and I think it's important to make positive improvements. Taking a look at the fields on the north side of the site, if you will. Right now we have O'Brien and Westfield that are shown there. Many of the fields at this facility are undersized for recommended dimensions of Cal Ripken baseball. And then, in looking at that and trying to make improvements to the facility, we look at how can a field be best orientated, and still be a multi-function, facility as well. So we position home plates close to, the concession area, try to keep everybody, relatively close together. And then the outfield areas project, and we're proposing a fence along the perimeter. That fence is situated so that there still can be a nice large surface for any other sport activities such as soccer, because I know this facility is used on occasion for soccer as well. So those that use has been incorporated into this layout as well. Other improvements are really looking at improving some dugouts, expanding Chandler Field to have a more conventional geometry. You can see on the existing conditions plan, basically left field and right field are truncated, so that field is quite small. So the fence would just project out, and these improvements would allow for that. We are showing allocating another space for a future batting cage. And then we're looking at relocating the playground. Currently, the playground is situated here on the kind of the left field foul ball range of full fields. And again, being somebody that's been on this site a lot over the years, you will occasionally get a pretty strong foul ball that goes into a playground area. So one of the concepts or ideas here is positioning this new playground in an area where you will not get any foul balls, really. And, positioning it close to the backside of Cole Field, because Cole Field has a very tall fence. So any home run that would be hit out of here should actually be beyond the playground area. So this provides kind of a safe haven for younger children to be. Certainly in this position here, it's more centrally located between all the fields as well, away from any of the vehicular activity. So that's an overview of the improvements that are proposed. I mean, I think this is a great site. I can tell you that over the years, I mean, my kids have had great experiences here on a number of levels. Baseball, they have played other sports here. It's a great place to go and utilize, even if you're not doing a team event. There just seems to be a lot of community involvement here. I've met some of my best friends in this facility. I've made great connections in the community. I just think it's a great place for people to come together, and it's certainly a place that I think can benefit from some pretty what I would consider simple improvements, because you guys see me here all the time presenting projects that are altering things much more than this. But taking, Lane Field and turning that into a parking area and, repositioning fields and really kind of investing in the future of youth sports is a great thing. And, was happy to come tonight and hopefully I can answer any questions that the board and public may have. So thank you.
Would you just clarify the 18 existing spaces on the east side? It shows them here, but are they to be eliminated, did you say, or not? Or?
No, those would be maintained.
Okay, they'll still be there.
There's a stockade fence on the back side of those spaces, so I think the goal is to maintain those.
It's just that they won't have hard pack on them. Is that why they aren't colored the gray, or?
They're not new, and
Oh,
that's why they're not
okay.
colored gray.
All right, so they stay
Those
there.
are kind of existing. We're proposing to formalize, this parking, and, to really make sure there's no issues with people parking off-site in the right-of-ways, and so on. And there's, Swansea, Cal Ripken has been, pretty successful over the years. They've had the ability to have state tournaments here. They've won state championships, I think, on 3 or 4 occasions, if I'm not mistaken. That's and so when you're doing events like that, infrequently you will get a large number of people at this site. So we really wanted to show a plan and depict on a plan for those larger circumstances and make sure that we are accommodating those conditions. And it looks like the site can certainly support that, without large modifications.
Would you speak to the upgrade of the septic system?
Sure, so we did a septic design here, quite a few years back, and basically it was, we had to provide a design, the existing system is functioning and fine. But we had to do a septic design for the facility so that if the existing system had any issues, a new system would be installed. So this system was designed based on normal capacity for larger events, and actually throughout the season, to my knowledge, and I don't believe that's changed. There's porta pots that are situated near the field, so those take a large load. There is a bathroom, a permanent bathroom on the back side of the concession stand here. But that has been designed, it's approved by the state, and when it needed to be installed.
Okay, so that's noted on there for future use, the proposed leach field as well as the proposed 1250 gallon tank, right?
That's
As long as the system there is intact and is working, that will not be put in this upgrade, correct?
It doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
I mean, that decision can be made depending on what funds are available, but yeah, most times, if you have a shelf-ready design, most people will utilize that existing field, and it really gets used rather, infrequently. I can tell you from normal operations, I think that, parents tend to use and kids tend to use the closest facility to a field while their, kid is enjoying a game, whether they're watching it or and parents or families are enjoying the game. So we don't see lines typically or anything like that at the permanent facility, which is the only one that would utilize that field along with some, water from the concessions.
Okay, I just wanted you to clarify that. You said proposed on there and it looked like it was going to be built this time, so that's.
We just wanted to show it because it shows all the
Yeah,
potential.
I get it. Just want to clarify. Beverly, were you going to say something? Oh,
No.
all right. Planning board members, actually, the planning board members are going to quiz the applicant first for a while here, and then when we're done, we'll open it up to the public. Okay? So planning board members, you have questions?
With the improvements, will this field be open for pickup games for the kids?
Speak up. We're going to speak up.
With the improvements, will this field be open for the kids on a Sunday afternoon to have a pickup? Or any other time?
I'm not aware of that not being allowed. I mean, I think that kids can utilize I hope it's allowed because I've done that with my family. We go down there and hit balls to our kids so I think it's still going to be utilized by the public. It's town-owned land. As long as nobody's there causing mischief, I suspect they'll use it.
Can you speak to that? Is that correct?
You use the word Sunday afternoon.
I just use that as a day of the week.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
So, beginning the Saturday after, the children have vacation, and then I think go school, let's just say the last Saturday in April through, the first Saturday in June runs our regular season. And we will be losing one field as a result of this lane field. So currently our program runs Monday through Thursday and some rainout days play on Friday nights, just to give you a barometer. And then on Saturday mornings to Saturday afternoon, depending on the time of day, how many teams we're playing, if we're playing interleague games with Keene, or we're going to Keene, really depends. We only use then the facility on Saturdays and Sundays predominantly, starting the second weekend in June through about July 4th. And that is what's called our all-star season, where our kids at ages 9, 10, 11, 12 play all-stars on teams of 12 or 13, and some state tournaments and some invitational tournaments. But otherwise, we really only on Sundays. But I would say, once the season's over, there's really not a lot of potential conflicts as of the middle of July through Ashley soccer season that starts this coming weekend.
Well, even with that, like say, it is technically,
Just a second, let the board get through other questions and then.
well, I was gonna add to what you
Are
said.
you want to?
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, all I'm gonna say is that it's open,
Yes.
but there's scheduled games predominantly during the season.
But it is gonna remain open as it is now, and there were scheduled games now, and there, if there was a conflict, you couldn't do that.
Right.
And did that answer your question?
Well, that's what I was gonna add to it. So right now, we have Plainfield and Brown
Would you
Memorial.
just identify yourself for our record?
I'm Ashley Crosby, I'm the recreational director for the
Thank you.
town. With that, anytime things are not permanently scheduled for the field, they're completely available to the town of Swansea, regardless the day,
Okay.
the time, as
I
long
think-
as there's not a scheduled event happening in our season.
That's what we were wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the planning board?
Excuse me, Chad, are you aware as to whether or not this proposal has gone before the town and been approved, as it states in section 9 of the public license agreement between Cal Ripken and the town?
We go to the board next week.
So actually, what we're talking about right now is a moot point.
No, the town, the selectmen have asked us to come to the planning board, because in the past, we have never gone to the planning board. So they've asked us to go to the planning board. And then next week, if there's any changes or whatever, or however, the planning board, adds information or changes or whatever, they will either accept it or ask for modification to select board. That's the steps going. So they're gonna either ratify it, you ratify it tonight, or they'll ask for the changes or whatever.
So, yeah, the selectmen want to know then basically what's been determined by the planning board. If it's okay with the planning board, I guess. And if that's okay, then the selectmen have the final say over whether you go back to the drawing board or not. Correct?
Correct. Because the informational aspect that I don't know the date, actually, I went to the selectmen, I believe it was in June, might have been May, I'm not sure, let's use the word patchwork, it was abandoned to our deteriorating dugouts in O'Brien. And then we're trying to address the parking, which we came up to the last planning board meeting, you asked for a master plan. So we went back to our board, which actually part of the baseball board as a rec director from Swansea, and we met for a number of hours and said, let's ask and work with Chad to have a master plan and solve the parking problem. And we agreed that we didn't really have much of a choice. We're gonna solve the parking problem, we had to give up the field. So that's where we stand in terms of the process.
And you're meeting with
Saying that, Sarah?
You're meeting with the selectmen next week, I guess, for final approval.
Right, they gave us the initial approval.
Yeah.
And it was, and then they said to come to the planning board.
Did that answer your question? Or what, do you have a different point?
Okay. Going along with that, under that same section, your lease agreement allows for the new dugouts at O'Brien Field and a two-story building being your announcing booth at O'Brien Field. There is nothing else in this agreement allowing you to change, alter, or anything else without town approval. And what I am assuming is town approval is that it has to go before the selectmen before we can work on it ourselves. If Cal Ripken wants to go back and resubmit or refile a new lease that would allow that, then I have no problem with it. The overall plan looks good, but they're violating their own lease agreement.
Well, the lease agreement,
Until the town approves, being the selectmen approve the changes.
but the lease agreement is not part of the planning board's purview per se. It's the selectmen's purview. That's what they decide after they go on and all, but it doesn't mean that the planning board can't review the plans and actually hash it out as to whether it's a good design or it's gonna work or anything like that. You know, the planning board giving it approval doesn't mean that it's finally approved until the selectmen do approve it.
Then it would come back to us.
Probably not unless they change something in the site plan, like any other site plan review. If they change something in the site plan, then they have to come back to the planning board.
I think part of the confusion, if you don't mind me speaking.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that this board is more accustomed to approving something and then going to construction, right? So you normally are last in line. With this particular case, and I think you clearly saw in the document displaying, the selectmen are the ones that make the decision. So this proposal on some level has gone to the selectmen have asked us to come to the planning board. So we're here at the request of the selectmen, and then ultimately they're the ones that are going to make the decision. So that's the order of approval of this particular arrangement, which is kind of exactly what you're referencing in there. So it wouldn't come here after approval. They're the last one in line, unlike what you are accustomed to typically being the last one. So we're really here tonight to present the plan and try to get some feedback and hopefully, some support, and so that we can go to the selectmen and finalize a plan. That's our hope. But the selectmen will ultimately approve this, and they are the ones that are part that the agreement is, I haven't looked at that document, but so I think it's consistent with what you're.
I just want my field back.
We could rename one of yours.
Well, I think it makes better sense that we're doing it this way. Because then it'll bounce back and forth between selectmen and planning board. If it wasn't, if the planning board gets done with it, yeah, and the selectmen, and if they do breach their own contract, that's them, that's planning board has nothing to do with that at all. Planning board just has to do with the plan and whether it meets site plan regulations and so on and so forth. Any other answer? That didn't answer your question, or are you?
No, it's that, and there was something else. Maybe this is not the time on it, but the waivers that we had granted, I think may need to go back and be revisited, or can we not do?
If we've already granted them and accepted the application is complete and opened up the public hearing, we can't go back and renege on that. So,
But they've altered things immensely since the first.
they have, but we've asked them to. We sent them back to the drawing board in that regard. Was there a particular, we can discuss it, and we may not change it, but we can discuss any of those waivers where you think there might be a problem. And we'll do that here, find them there, and we can do it. There's other things that I want to.
Yeah, go ahead, Jan, please.
Let's see. There's a memorandum from Joe DeRusso, the DPW director. Do you have that? There are several bullet points, and let me just give you my copy of it. Would you just go over those?
Some ones are from the rec.
Oh, those are from the rec department. Okay, would you just go over those from the rec department? Just if you read it out loud, I don't think anybody else has a copy either. So, or I'll read it out loud if you want, and you can just speak to it.
Yeah,
Or you haven't seen it either.
I can read it out loud if you want.
That's fine.
Chance to digest it.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
The addition of the batting cage is the first comment. The ground currently washes out there, and it's on 4 foot or so uphill grade. What will support the batting cage, drainage plan, and the new one in existence? That's a great question. We actually had some conversation about that. The grade off of the right field side of what would be Westfield, the new orientation, the proposed orientation of Westfield does go up on an incline there. We were talking about potentially doing a small, like a little landscape retaining wall in that location, which would absorb, maybe 3 or 4 feet of grade right close to the fence. So there would be no, no issues safety wise there. That would help us flatten that slope out. The other thing we talked about is using like a geogrid, like erosion control matting, which we normally do on any slopes that are over 3 to 1, for stabilizing that area as well. So that ultimately would be part of what I would say the final, design is. We're trying to have everybody, agree on a conceptual layout so that we could work on, those final details for construction. But that's an excellent question. Will definitely be addressed so that there's no erosion and drainage issues in that location. Generally speaking, there are no drainage issues on the property because it's a very well drained sandy, site, but definitely want to prevent any localized, erosion. So that's a great question. Second one is the sledding on the hillside will no longer be possible if the outfield fence is permanent. Removable fencing would allow for sledding in appropriate space from the soccer field. I will say that we are showing a proposed fence along the perimeter. We have allocated for the soccer field to fit inside, that fence there. So that wouldn't be an issue. There is ample room for the soccer field. As it relates to, temporary fencing or not, I mean, this is actually the hill starts, this orientation actually moves the fields further in the southerly direction. So there's actually quite a bit of room at the base of the hill here. The preference, I believe, would be to kind of formalize the perimeter of the field and make sure that we can keep everything, on site. But that's ultimately not, my call. I don't know if Mr. Hogan wants to address that at all, but
Just, they're talking about sledding in that looks like the, northwesterly corner.
yeah, I think it's this.
You're familiar with that? Yeah, it looks like due to the line, it looks like it's this corner right here. And they're just wondering about sledding in there since people use it for sledding, I guess, in the wintertime, if that fence could be removable or something in the wintertime, because sledding down the hill, you probably aren't going to stop them sledding down the hill, but the fence will stop them when they run into it. So any ideas on that, or if that could be accommodated?
To put a permanent fence in, the goal is to have the facility contained, and in that regard, we've talked at the town level, and we've shared our comments in terms of the investment it's going to take to do this project. In terms of building these fields, maintaining these fields, and the process of keeping them contained such that we won't have animals on their fields as much as possible as we move forward with this project. So our goal is to put up a permanent fence to keep the wildlife or pets off the fields if we're going to spend a sizable amount of money in that regard.
Okay.
So screw them.
Yes, not necessarily, no way. We're asking to explain what they're doing there. So, a comment was brought up about, a fence maybe being removable. And they're explaining why they're thinking in their way. But again, the selectmen has final approval of it, they could require that or request it. But anyway, we're just going down a list here. Would you address the next one?
Sure. Yeah, the remaining fence along Putt Drive should be reflected on the plan. That probably could happen. Our survey limits ended here. So we didn't locate, that fence any further up, but if that's something that somebody would like to see, and we wouldn't have an issue, doing that. We focused kind of on the parking area and the field area, and the turnaround was requested to be relatively quick, so we tried to accommodate that and tighten the scope, but we can definitely add that in if that's a concern. Are the leach field and septic being upgraded during this project?
You already addressed that.
Yeah. Long-term maintenance for the retaining wall. I mean, we're talking about it's not a wall that is going to really require maintenance. Retaining walls in general, you're talking a concrete. They have a very long lifespan. We're talking very small height, so I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. And really the retaining walls will allow for maximum utilization of space, addresses some safety issues, and it really addresses some drainage and existing drainage and any potential erosion issues. So it's an improvement to the site. The next one, what material is the medians and parking lot? Will all spots be lined as shown? That's a good question. I mean, we have talked about that internally and with Mr. Hoden. We've done projects like this in the past for rec facilities, and often what happens, I mean, normally it's a hard pack or a gravel surface just because there are always financial concerns. So you have a very well drained soil, a good gravel finish will certainly last. What would anticipate is a lot of times down like the center aisle here, we'll do a large, like a landscaped, landscaped timber, if you will. And you can actually paint on that where the spaces should be. So when you're expecting an event that would require parking spaces to be striped, you can stripe them for that event. And I do believe that Swansea Cal Ripken does that, with this gravel area during, in preparation for a tournament. They could easily do the same thing here with appropriate bordering. It would be easy, easy to do. So that's what we would anticipate, something like that, that's budget friendly, but also very efficient and would allow, at the very least, for a barrier to be between these two. And it would, and then you have the stockade fence on this side too. So that gives it a hard barrier there. And it really kind of tells people how they're supposed to park. Because when the first car pulls into a gravel parking lot and there's nothing, if they park wrong, it starts a bad trend right off. So that is something that we talked about, and we can certainly address. Gate access, how will the gates be locked? Who will have access to open the gates? Fire, police, public works, recreation. Typically on any gates, and we've had this discussion with this board many times, any gates on a project, they are normally equipped with a Knox box, which is a box that fire department, emergency personnel, and certainly the town owns the property, would have access to that key. I would suspect that Swansea Cal Ripken, anybody that's formally using the field will also have key access to that key. The goal is to prevent people from coming in the off hours. I know there's been the occasional issue with, somebody, a young kid coming in and, spinning the wheels and doing some damage. And oftentimes that maintenance has been, taken up by Mr. Hoden in this group. So, AED access on the cook shack. With closed gates, the AED is only accessible from the parking lot area. If an emergency was directed to the box, may cause delays with an emergency. Well, what I can say about that is we maintain this corridor here right to the concession stand, where this is the building that those boxes are fastened to. So there is access here. Similar to this being drivable, almost any surface here is drivable because it's a nice standing under material. And then emergency response, you would definitely have access, as we stated, to the Knox box keys on the gate. So I don't think there's any issues with that, but if the fire department or, and anybody had any recommendations that they wanted to make, you certainly, accommodate those, for improving that access.
Okay, thank you. I think that was the last. I think that's all we have on those boards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see now. Eric Mattson indicated support of the fire access lane as submitted. Mattson also supports the earlier plan that proposed discontinuing fire access, gating off the area and planting grass, provided that no structures were placed within the area designated for emergency access. Mattson would also like to see the placement of a gate on the reconstructed Westfield Spring Cactus. So fire department is all set with the gate by the sound of it. They're on board with that. And the DPW Director Joe DeRusso has indicated his support of the proposed changes to the parking area at the Swansea Ball Field. The parking lot will need perimeter swales to be pitched, directing stormwater and runoff into the swales. Drainage at the end of the mill lane was recently upgraded and will accept the additional water from the proposed parking area without issues. DPW recommends removing all organic and unstable soil and to lay down 6 inches of hard pack or crushed gravel. DPW is able to work with Hoden to regrade the parking lot, grade the swales, and remove unstable soil. The town is able to provide gravel, hard pack for the project at a cost of approximately $5,000 to $6,000 the applicant. So it looks like the parking lot is gonna be hard packed then. It's been, the topsoil taken off and hard packed on it. Okay.
One comment by Nathan that was sort of lost in the bird, the addition of a gate to Westfield for emergency access.
Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. We would, that's a great comment. We would probably have a gate here, you know, to this field, and I would suspect there'd probably be a gate, you know, over here on that field, both for maintenance and emergency access. Yeah,
So that would be put on the plaque then.
yeah.
Are there any questions from the members of the board? Then, just a second. And I know everybody's been chomping at the bit to get a crack at these guys, so just actually to keep it civil, and when you have a question, just raise your hand, I'll call on you, state your name, and try and direct your questions at me, and I'll try and keep it civil. Yes, sir, I'll take your first.
Robert King, I own the property, above this. And I think, personally, I think it's a major improvement over a lot of issues that we've had. Repeatedly, the parking has always been a major problem, so I think it's an improvement from that. But I have a serious concern. I'm too old to do it, but this permanent fence, this is the best sliding hill in the town of Swansea. And I've lived there for 38 years, and Neil, who lives here, keeps his parking open. You go there anytime in the wintertime, school vacations, there are significant families and kids that are always using that sliding hill. They come up and park right on our field at the top of the hill off the road, which is not a problem. They walk across, it's great family time. To cut that out this is the community space. I think we can come up with something that you do something if you need to keep the wildlife. There's not much wildlife, maybe a rabbit to put in there. You could do something with snow fencing through the summer. Years ago, they had put up soccer field fencing in the fall, and as soon as they started sledding, I called the town and said, hey, there's kids sliding in this post and stuff there. And they never thought about it, and they came over and removed it. The kids are going to slide. There's not enough room there to stop. The great thing in this field for steps and sliding is it's a great even pitch. There's nothing to hit. Field, you can come out and go right out across the ball fields. Young kids, old kids, it's safe. We have a scoreboard right that you would slide into. We have a fence, so that's my biggest beef. I can't slide there anymore. I'm too old. My grandkids spend a lot of time. All the kids in the neighborhood have all grown up doing it, and people come from all over to do it. It would be a shame that we would cut that off.
So there's no fence there now, is that correct?
There is no fence there. There's never been a fence back here, other than when they put up temporary snow fencing for soccer in the fall. So there's never been a fence, so it's always great. You know, you get a nice long hill that comes down through there. And it's, you know, it's a nice even pitch. It's a good safe place. Children don't get hurt. They come from all over the slide there.
Okay.
Okay, so it
Thank you.
should be considered.
Well, Mr. Houghton, how important is that fence up there?
When I say wildlife, we're really going after the dog issue.
And is that a problem now? Because there's no fence there now, correct?
With the significant improvements that we're looking to spend, it's a problem, and I have mentioned it to the town and the selectmen, and Ashley and I have talked about it extensively over the past week. The dog issue is an enormous concern. And keeping the fields so that we don't have dogs defecating in these fields going forward. And that's why we're looking for the permanent structure.
Okay, yes, Miss.
Hi, Kristen Trombley, I'm the
Would
butter,
you spell your last name, please?
Trombly.
Thank you.
I have other things to comment on, but I just want to address the dog issue. I have dogs, I don't like dogs. There are going to be dogs on that field more when you fence it in, because that's why they're out there now. People bring their dogs. And once there's a gate onto West and O'Brien Field like they need to be, they're going to get in there and they're going to use that more than they do now, because people in the town are looking for a fenced in area to let the dogs run around. I'm not, I don't go out there. My dogs get out there, it's by accident. But to say that the fence is needed to keep dogs out, it's actually going to mean that they're gonna want to move more, in my opinion.
You had another, this is more, you had another question you said?
Oh, I
That
got a
wasn't-
whole bunch of stuff. talking
that wasn't the initial question you had, you want to talk to that? Yes, sir.
So my name is Brian Virgo, I'm pretty new into this, but.
What is your last name?
Virgo, so.
Spell it, please.
He is in Victor, he is in Echo, R is in Romeo, he is in Delta, he is in Echo. She is- We'll come back to.
Come back to
We'll come back to
that.
it. No, on the dog issue though, since this being town property, my question would then be, so if if the lessee is able to utilize this property that's town property, are dogs not allowed on town property such as this? I mean, that's my question. So if the person who's leasing this, but the town is the landlord, unless the town has said no dogs, I don't see why dogs can't come on.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but I would think that if
So,
someone is leasing, or you haven't, you know about.
So Ashley and I are prepared to have a discussion with the selectmen, not to allow dogs on the plane, which there's a permit going forward. For health issues with children, with dog feces, etc. It's similar to Brownfield, some of the other places in the town of Swansea. That's why we're looking at this.
We were laying down soccer field the other day and had to take the dog to the police.
People are not cleaning up certain individuals, not all, not lumping everybody together, but this investment by local establishments, local businesses, to do this project will be north of $300,000. And an investment like this that we wish to have last, there will be no guarantee that we will have a gentleman in a yellow house who takes care of his own, plus others. throughout the field. Very, very straight up, just gonna play the way it is. I'm not gonna ask that person to do that. It's not a dog park. And I've said it to Neil a number of times. We're grateful for his cleaning up.
Yeah.
But he doesn't only clean up his. Let's be very truthful about this dog issue. And as you look to build a facility and you make it so that everybody can do it, baseball or soccer. Soccer picks up fields with this. Baseball or soccer wins. The community wins with a fenced-in facility
Okay,
where you can't have dogs.
yeah, we get your point, but there still is the option of a removable fence for the winter time, perhaps there.
But then the dogs still go on that field and create a problem.
Yeah, they'd be there anyways.
All right, yes, sir, you had your hand up back there, or what, behind you, your name?
Christopher Tri, Patria. They need a smoking area.
But wait a minute, the town has an ordinance that there's no smoking on town property at all.
Well, they need a smoking area because what that does, it costs everybody else's property.
Would you repeat that? I didn't quite catch that second. Would you repeat what you said about the abutting properties?
It sends these people out to
Oh,
everybody else's property.
on the neighbor's lawn.
And Christian owns most of the property up Putt Drive. Okay, and back to the head of you guys saying, these guys saying that people go to the nearest toilet. Well, they're out having a cigarette in our property, on Christian's property, they're using their yard as a toilet also. Yeah. And that's why we want the extra 75 feet that goes up the hill, because the people on O'Brien Field coming around the back of the building, smoke at the, in the road, and go behind the short fence onto our property, they pee, they poop.
Trash. It's awful.
And we did 7 years, we've been complaining about it, and they don't do a single thing, not one thing.
Well,
So they need a smoking area and people that actually walk around and say, stay off the people's property.
so maybe this fence that's gonna almost do the whole perimeter of the property will help. that.
No, it doesn't. That 75 feet that goes up the hill, it finishes off what they said, because 4 years ago, Kristen's mother died of Alzheimer's. Okay, and they started that fence project. It was a horrible death. She died at the house. And the whole time we had to worry about people parking in the driveway. And nobody gave a crap. Nobody watched it. We had to watch it ourselves, so when the ambulance came, they could help her. Okay?
Well, we're
And then
addressing,
when she went, after her mother died, a week after her mother died, she went on a trip to Ireland. They called. Jasmine came over. He was involved in it. And we all, when she was on the ship, when she was in Ireland, we made the deal to have that fence put on the property line because it's supposed to be off the property line. Right?
I don't know. You
Yes,
tell
it
me.
is.
Okay,
Supposed to be off the property line, because as of right now, if they want to maintain their fence, they have to get permission to come on to the property, Kristen's property, in which they will never get. They need the fence that they promised in the deal when she was in Ireland, after her mother died. He was involved in it, and he's sitting right there. He knows it. Keeps people off the property. We had a family gathering. Lady came out, she had the runs leaned against the tree.
Yeah.
Right in front of our whole family.
so you're looking for the extension of the fence that's supposed to be there now, right?
That she made a deal
Okay,
with,
you're looking for that, and you're looking for a smoking area.
and a smoking area, because
Those two
also we
things.
had last spring, I had a fire in my wood chips.
Okay, so those two things you're looking for.
And we get, no, you couldn't listen to me, and
I
I
have,
have one other one. They have to have something to do with their trash, because when they finish baseball on Friday or Saturday. And we have a storm. All that trash goes into all the neighbors' yards, because all the barrels tip over, nobody picks up the trash. Nothing, it comes into everybody's yards.
well, those complaints you can voice at the selectmen's
Well,
meeting.
they should have, well, I'm saying that they should have areas out in this ball field, like other ball fields. That they can do this stuff, that people can go and smoke, people can they can put their trash, they can pick up the ball field now.
Well, I thought you just said they had barrels. I thought you just said they had barrels around there for people to try
They
to
don't.
not go.
They blow over.
Yeah, but you're saying that, you know, you need to play for people with trash. Those.
No, not the people the ball field people, sorry, pick up
They need to
the,
pick it up, right? But
because they don't
again,
even anchor the barrels to the fences, they blow all over the place.
Okay,
Can I just address?
would you address the fence
One thing.
or we?
I'm not sure about the fence, but what I'd like to speak to is, you know, I mean, I think that the reality right now is O'Brien Field is orientated where home plate is here. They're the furthest from the facilities. Meaning there's quite a disconnect here. So there's people that sit up on this slope and watch, the game. There's a lot of activity along this left field sideline. And then people are along this right field sideline because of the current orientation. By flipping the field and having home plate here and all the dugouts here, all the activity is going to be internal and much closer to, the kind of the support system, if you will, where the restrooms are, where the portalette bodies are typically located. So I think this is going to be an improvement to, those experiences that may be occurring on a rare occasion.
You mean, you mean?
No, wait a minute.
The smoke, it's town property. I mean, it's supposed to be a smoke free.
Right, it's an ordinance, it's an ordinance. Smoking
So then
is-
how do we keep people off everybody else's property? And them throwing their cigarettes in everybody else's property? How do you stop that? If you can't allow them to have go someplace on your property, you're saying the town's skipping into everybody else's property, you screw up their property?
I think I missed your point.
Exactly.
Everything is dry along the road, it's a fire hazard, and they're throwing their cigarette right there, go out to the mailbox and sitting there smoking.
Well, again, yeah, it's an enforcement issue. It's not a planning board issue. It's something, yeah, you can bring up at the selectmen's meeting, and whether they're gonna be able to stop it or not, I don't know, That's a different issue, but I'm curious about the fence that you're talking about. What is the fence he's talking about?
So if you look at the map. I'm not sure what year it was, so we extended to 75 feet, so I don't know the exact years, I'm not gonna say. Well, again, we exchanged emails this past plan, correct? And I
It's
still have,
been going on for 4 years, John. It's the 75 feet of fence up the hill that was spoken to at the July 28th planning board meeting that was supposed to be added along with the designating parking spots to the revised plan, and now it's not on there. It's been 4 years since it was promised. It was an exchange for letting the current fence that's on there go straight, which actually crosses into my land a little bit, which I agreed to in exchange for the rest of the fencing up the hill, because that allowed for a few more parking spaces. And as we all know, parking has always been a problem.
so the
But
75,
since then, they're trying to get you to put the fence in, and you keep saying things like, I don't know what you're even talking about, which is why I asked the July 28th planning board meeting to have it on the plat. This famous letter between you, me, and the town that you referenced in the 28th meeting. We talked about this a month ago.
and we had already agreed back in the spring or in the last winter that we would try to get it done by 4th of July. We are trying now.
Excuse me, this was supposed to be done within, by July 4 years ago.
We get that. Let him speak. Have a seat. Why, we did discuss that at that July 20th meeting.
So put it on the
And,
plan.
and it was agreed, I think, to put it on the plan, the extension of that fence. And would you just point out where that was supposed
Right,
to
it's right along here, where the 75 feet of fence is gonna go,
be? Okay,
and it's going to be done, the material of the purchase. So we're not gonna be doing installation until we set other concrete, because
that's all right. I know that, but you're not doing any of this installation yet. Yeah, that's what we want to add it to the plan up to where it's supposed to be. Okay, they're gonna add it to the plan.
I got one more thing to say.
Just one more. Keep it short for the other people.
That 75 feet was already purchased, there was extra, and it was supposed to go down the front. They already had the materials, and they did not put them up.
Well, if it's on the plat, they have to put it on.
Okay.
And you had a good point, it wasn't on the plat. When it's on the plat.
And I'm sorry, but it's been 4 years.
Okay,
I'm the one that cleans up the yard.
yes, sir.
What you don't understand.
Will you state your name? Could you say your name? Could you say your name?
Dealing with this, you know,
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't.
I've been dealing with this 7 or 8 or 9 years. He says one thing, he does what he wants. He'll tell you anything. And you say, oh yeah, we all done, then it's forgotten.
Yeah.
You people, we haven't dealt with you people. We've dealt with the selectmen. I dealt with the selectmen 4 or 5 years ago, 6 or 8 times. And everybody agrees this was gonna be done, and that was gonna be done, and the other's gonna be done, and nothing ever gets done.
But
That's why we're all here and we're all upset.
That's right. And we understand that. Yeah, we've been hearing that.
I know you're not to blame, but you're the face of the town that we can speak to at this moment.
Exactly. That's why you're here, and that's why we're having you speak and air these issues. Now, just let me explain to you, those other times you're speaking of, they didn't have a site plan like this.
Right.
The planning board deals with site plans, and that's why we have things on site plans, because what's agreed to and approved at the planning board meeting and what's on the site plan are the same thing, and they have to be put on.
And you can't prove the site plan right now, because that fence is not on it.
That's correct. That's right.
Correct?
That's right.
Right.
That's right. But again, getting back to your point there, it's been informal, all the discussions you had with the selectmen and with Mr. Houghton here and anybody else. It's been informal, but it's been nothing actually documented on a drawing. This is different. This is on a drawing. This is what we're talking about. We can all see it. We all know what's there, and that's all what they plan to put there. And by the sounds of it, they plan to do it. And if it's on there, like we're gonna have them put it on there, it'll be done. You have more?
Oh, I have a lot of them.
Well, let
Let somebody else.
Let somebody else.
I'll get my breath.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Does that mean that if a dog goes through the parking lot, goes through the pavilion, goes out through the ball fields, through the inlets that the ball players walk through and gets onto the field, that they're in violation?
Who's in violation, do you mean?
I mean, you want the fence up there, the dogs don't get on the lawn.
Yeah, but that's, I think so, they
That
don't,
doesn't make sense. Why a dog, a cat, I'll bring my cats over there. Who cares? My cats loved it when I walked them over there. I don't do it anymore because I'm too old.
Oh,
but-
but I think your point is then that he said that he was going to talk to the selectmen about keeping or posting it, so no dogs in there. Is that what you're talking about?
But why?
Because of, I guess, the maintenance of the field, whatever, you know,
But if a dog gets out and wanders in there,
yeah, well,
what happens?
again, that will probably be
I'd
discussed.
rather not have that fence down, let those kids slide. Because they have a hell of a good time.
Yeah, it sounds, and we're hearing that. Yeah. So,
And I don't think I've seen more than 4 dogs in that whole park at any one time.
okay,
They're not there.
but again, that's not a site plan issue. I understand your concern, but it's not a site plan issue. It will be an issue for the selectmen's office when they,
I don't
Decide
know,
on it.
like John, we just don't seem to be meshing.
but this is different.
Nobody here.
Nobody meshes.
Yeah.
I don't even have a dog. I could care less. I have a dog come on my lawn every so often. Wow. He probably doesn't do anything. He runs through it.
Probably so.
We have deer, we have bear, we have mountain, a bobcat. We have animals that just wander all over the place, all over the fields.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Now I can hear myself.
Brian Vertigo from 129 South Road, there's mine.
Oh, good, thank you so much.
So, I'm pretty new to all this, so I just wanted to say, I think we can kind of see. I like stepping into things and saying, let's take a deep breath, let's step back here. We can see there's frustrations from the people who want to get things done at the field and the people living in the neighborhood, myself included. Now, that being said, so I'm glad it's going this way, to be more transparent. It's nice to see that there's some opportunity to work through some of these issues. I'm a new abutter into this, because I live on 129 South Road, which is affectionately known as the abandoned house by some here in the area. So we've been working pretty hard getting that thing fixed up. And so I just have a few concerns and questions regarding parking lot, things of that nature, and the landscaping plan. So you mentioned before earlier that there was waivers given for landscaping, and that, you asked them to readjust the plan and maybe waivers, we could look at that. And I would request that the board take a look at a landscape waiver. That with the plan changing so much, I want to be reasonable. I understand that there's changes that have to happen. There's issues with parking. Everyone can agree on that. So let's be reasonable and come to some sort of agreement here. But with that being said, so now we're looking at a 40,000 plus square foot parking lot, which there's issues with that in itself. Not that the parking lot's going in, but there's waivers that are required for 20,000 square feet plus. There's things that should be put in that we need to look at, soil erosion and things of that nature. So I would like the board to get a landscaping plan, because along South Road, so now I live right here. The new entrance is going to be 15 feet right off of my driveway. So now we're asking people who are exiting and entering into this new parking lot. They're going to be making a dangerous left-hand turn onto South Road, where people generally speed, go pretty quick because they're now coming onto the straightaway. So we're making a left-hand turn. And that left-hand turn, if it's 15 feet offset, it's coming right into my mailbox, right into where I park my car, where my kids go, where my pets are. So I would just like to request that we can have some kind of discussion that this can be moved. And it sounds like it probably could be with the way that the parking lot is set up, correct, Chad? I know, and I do want to call Chad out. We had a brief conversation and he was very helpful. So I think when there's good things happen, we should call that out. So thank you for that conversation. But I would like to have an explanation and talk about moving that entrance 30 or so feet away, just so we don't have somebody making a left-hand turn right into our property. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Moving in which direction? I don't mean to.
So just going more into the dead space, this whole thing here is dead space. So you've got a light utility pole there, which is about 220 feet away. So even moving 30 feet, you're not getting any closer. There's no DOT regulations about how close our entrance has to be to a utility pole. So I would like to have the board request that put into the plat here, that gets moved away 30 or so feet. And if things like that happen, I can jump on board and say, okay, yes, I get that things have to change, let's be reasonable, and that would make me pretty darn happy.
What are you suggesting on the landscape plan there?
Well, the landscape plan, I think you have to have a line of sight. There's got to be line of sight at South Road. Like I said, again, that's another safety issue, because people are flying down this straightaway here. People zoom down there because they're coming off the curb. Now they can do whatever the heck they want to do. So the landscaping plan, I mean, there's plenty of small shrubs, evergreens, something of that nature that I would like to see put in this space here, at least to cover that up. I mean, we are changing this community pretty significantly with that parking lot. While it's good, you're still changing it pretty significantly, so let's work within the environment, let's at least make this look halfway reasonable. I don't think that that's something that's crazy of us to ask, looking at a lot, plus it does help as a buffer, because I do feel that, yes, you have the split rail fence there, but additionally, when people are coming out of their cars, kids are excited, things are going on, what happens when they run right across the street, now they're in South Road, coming across the road, so it doesn't hurt to have another buffer there.
I think that's what the fence is for, right? So they won't be
Right,
running.
but you still got an entrance right there in front of our property. So yeah, you have a split rail, but a split rail, to my understanding, is split, so I can easily come right through. So I don't see the issue with at least landscaping this. I mean, that should be a part of the plan. I don't think that's unreasonable to ask. So I think that's something that even the Conservation Commission has put that out there, plants that are available. I think that's a reasonable ask.
So it's open now, correct?
Well, there's a fence there.
There's a fence, but I mean, it's open space now, I guess, without any landscaping there.
Yeah, but you're also not looking at an open parking lot with 150 plus spots going in there. So I would, looking out the window.
I'm just trying to determine what's the difference. It's still open, it might not be grass, but it's still open space. I'm just.
Yeah, but there's not 150 plus cars parked on an open grass front.
No, but shrubs aren't gonna shield 150 cars, I don't think.
Well, like I say, that's a part of the zone, that's a part of the planning board requirements, where it's like, hey, let's work within the environment. Let's at least, like I say, when things are like this are happening for abutters, let's at least have some kind of buffer zone here. Let's make this look reasonable and part of the environment of New Hampshire. So I don't see how that's an unreasonable ask. Plus, it is in there. If you start having more than 10 parking spots, there should be islands included. There should be landscape trees per spot. That is in the requirements. So
It is.
again, I don't see that being unreasonable. So I would like that addressed tonight. I always say my big ask is, again, just that driveway we pushed about 30 or so feet, and I can be a happy camper. But and then to finish that up, I'm trying to keep it kind of short. So while I do appreciate all your guys' work, and like I say, kind of be reasonable here, it is kind of funny hearing comments, and I can see where frustrations come from the community as well, especially being newer into this. When people say, well, you chose to live next to a ball field, or that's kind of your problem. Yes, next to this ball. That's what I chose to live next to.
Yeah.
So when I'm being reasonable, saying that I can live with some changes, then I would like some reciprocation back my way to say, okay, we can work with you. So.
All right, thank you. Just a moment. Do you want to address some of those issues, like the change in the location of the entrance?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
Brian and I did have a conversation this afternoon, and what I will say about that is the site distance and, turning movements and stuff like that, there's no safety issues with any entrance that we would put along this stretch here, just because it's going to meet and exceed all safety criteria. With that said, I've been on this site a lot. There's definitely enforcement issues, and I think some of those have come up. There is some occasional speeding, but out of the interest of working with, a budding landowner, we have no issues with shifting this entrance down, 30 or 40 feet. It's not going to materially change the number of parking spaces, and I think it's I'm happy he reached out. It's a reasonable request. When it comes to landscaping, I would just say that landscaping is very difficult next to a roadway. It's a maintenance issue, and it's town-owned property. I mean, that's going to be a tough thing to maintain over time, especially in winter conditions. They salt this road. There's it's just I would caution on that. I mean, certainly there's a lot of investment going in. I think a split rail fence, a nice split rail fence, is gonna improve that look through there, and the majority of the time the parking area will not have 150 cars, really, for a day where there's a large event going on. So it's going to be on a rare less frequent occasion. So definitely, I talked with Mr. Hoden about moving the entrance and kind of the pros and cons of that, and we have no issues doing that. And so if that's something the board wants to consider as a recommendation to the selectmen, we be happy to oblige with that.
Okay.
Sir, if you look at that site plan, that large parking lot, you stand up in front of it, look at it on the right-hand side, there's white space that says proposed sign for Swansea ball field. See what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Okay. You try to pull a car out of there, and you're not gonna be able to see down towards 32 because the sign's gonna be, unless you make it high enough, so they're not.
Actually, I know what you're saying, and we actually intentionally position the sign where it is, because it's outside of sight lines for people turning out of there. A vehicle sight line is 10 feet off the travel way, 3 feet 9 inches in both directions, so it creates a sight line triangle. And that sign is situated more than 10 feet off the travel way, so there will be no issues with sight lines there. But that's a great question, but definitely something we've taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hi, Kristen, probably again, I'm up here, segueing onto what Brian was saying. You know, I agree that I really think that the waivers that were granted in the initial hearing should somehow be looked at, whether that means that you deny the current application and the new one be resubmitted. I don't know how that works with your procedure and process, but this plan is dramatically different than what was provided prior to the start of this public hearing in July 28th. The parking was going to be back here on Westfield. You know, it's just very different. And I support more parking. I totally support more parking. I especially support this removal of parking because this is a dangerous turn right here, coming right off. So I totally support this, but I think that all of the rules that any other organization would have to follow, putting in a giant parking like this in a space within the town of Swansea, should be followed. And based on what I read in the rules and regulations, plan review regulations, that the landscaping plan is pretty significant when it comes to something of this size. I'm not saying you have to have a landscaping plan with got rose bushes and things, but you need to have a plan that says where the island's going to be. You know, if you're going to bring a waiver on the one tree per 20 spaces, you know, it should all be discussed as part of the public hearing. And right now, we don't have any framework to speak around. We just have a giant, you know, hard package of parking. And also, let's keep in mind, this is a residential district. So this is an opportunity to make it blend in more in a very purposeful way with the rest of the organ, you know, the rest of the environment around, like Brian was saying, it's New Hampshire. So, you know, if you can help people who clearly, when they visit this ball field currently, don't seem to have any idea of how to manage parking their vehicles in any kind of efficient way. These spectators need a lot of help with their parking. So whatever can be done in here to make it more efficient and more effective for when they do pull in, whether it's the lines and the parkings or more islands or some trees or what have you, I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have. And we're kind of blown by it because the waiver that was granted at the beginning of the original start of the public hearing, because that was on a very different plan. And then the other reason why I'd like to see that sort of a reset here, like taking a deep breath and doing a reset, is these folks are all here because we made sure that our neighbors knew that this was happening. And that it was dramatically different than what maybe they had gone to the town hall back in the middle of July to look at. So, you know, let's do this in a collaborative way and well. Yeah.
Would you be willing to give up parking spaces for trees?
Yes.
And as long as the overall number of parking spaces fit the typical use of the field, and that maybe there's some purposeful analysis done around what that would be. We have other town fields around, the local one.
See, I'm getting different answers from the gallery.
Right, well, and that's fine. I mean, this is,
No, you said you agree.
Yeah.
You agree.
Yeah.
You agree
I agree with that, what you're saying, that needs to be looked at.
Like, how do we know how to mark space?
I asked about giving up parking spots for trees.
And you agree?
Because looking at it and changing it would do that, so yes.
Okay.
And to echo on to that, this is all hypothetical at this moment that we're talking about. That's why having a plan to discuss in a public hearing around islands and trees and parking lots would be a helpful thing.
It's easier to do things on paper than executive sports.
I'm sorry.
It's easier to do things on paper than after it's closed.
Exactly. The other comments I wanted to make, I'll try to keep this quick, is also in that rules and regulation that talked about the erosion control and needing the erosion and sedimentation control design handbook plan when you're exceeding 20,000 square feet of cumulative disturbed area. And was that waived? If it was, fine, but if it was waived with a plan that was different than what we're talking about doing here. There's also the question of the driveway permit from the state, like would they even allow this? But, I really think that there's more work to be done, there's more communication to happen, there's more documents to be drawn up that everyone can wrap their head around and discuss and get a global plan together, because frankly, that's what's been missing for the last couple of years. And I'm very appreciative to the planning board. The other thing I want to add, that we can back straight here, is that this isn't just a courtesy or an informational thing, passed by the planning board and then selectmen can do whatever they want. It was determined, and it was stated back in July 28th, that there's a New Hampshire RSA that applies to town property that's been used for a non-governmental use, which is what this is. It's a third-party organization using town property. And that RSA says that when that happens, the same local land use regulations must be followed, which means you guys are the ones who get to, mediate and determine what makes the most sense.
Yep, we've established that at the
Right,
last meeting.
so,
That's
but there
probably
was a comment at the very beginning of this that it's, it's here as a courtesy or informative, and nobody knows nothing, and they're gonna give approval or not. This site plan, and whatever it takes for you guys to get to that process, to approve the site plan has to happen according to the state.
It is,
Just a courtesy.
it is,
Okay,
it's happening, and the planning board also can waive their own rules.
right, exactly.
That is what we have been doing, and
The last couple of comments that I'll just give you these real quick. We talked about the fencing. There was a mention both last time and in the memo that came out with the packet about the announcer score booths thing behind home plate. They're not on here. Where are they still happening or not? Should they be on the plan about the structure? Where the memorial benches and the trees, which are currently over in here somewhere, being moved to. We pay for all of this, especially the new well, which I think the well is being moved, is that correct? No. Yeah, that's in the same place. This sand and material corral up here, that's already been put in place, that's impeding the deeded right of way to this property back here. It is impeding into the right of way. So, my opinion, that should be moved elsewhere while you're building a plan. Why would that be left up there into a deeded right of way? Fifth Avenue, I don't understand, given all the drainage and stuff right now, there's gullies coming out of here, not to mention the trees and shrubbery that are growing inside of them. I'm not sure why we need to Fifth Avenue. And then my last point is spectators. So where are the spectators going to sit or stand or watch in regards to these two new oriented fields? That's what I'm trying to figure out. My concern is, especially in here, if this is fenced, right? It's safe to assume the spectators are not inside the fence. Is that true? Right. So something's playing at West Field. Where are the spectators for that game? They're gonna hang out right in here. Right by all the parking where people are backing out, and that doesn't seem like there's enough room to maneuver safely. Also, managing spectators to, not fill up the emergency access with easy ups and tens and
No bleachers for those
You know,
two fields there that are on that site plan at all.
and I have the same question for Brian, although this has a little bit more room. I'm mainly worried about spectators for this plan for West, where they're gonna go, and in some ways over in here. We know that the current participants of this field, the spectators that come to watch this field, are oblivious to their own safety. Because they hang out practically in the road over here. So to think that people will not park themselves over here to watch a game because of the parking spaces here, they're gonna do it unless you give them another spot. So where is that? I would also question, since there's a gate here, coming up in here, we really need more, no parking signs up and around the maintenance building. There's already supposed to be no parking back beyond in here, although those signs disappeared this year. Because now people are gonna come in here looking for a space to park and have to turn around and go out when there isn't one. So how is that maneuvering going to be managed in here? We talked about what material is going to be. You really have to put no parking sign up on these gates too. It sounds ridiculous, but people will parallel park up against the gate. They will, unless you put a sign up telling them not to. And then there's
If it isn't enforced, it'll do it by law.
okay, so the last thing to say about the town.
You said that last one.
Oh, sorry, I really need it this time. That's valid. But when we were here on July 28th, one of the questions I had was, what was the impetus? What was the stated purpose for the original plan that was presented to us? And I was told it was for safety concerns, with the road that cuts through the middle, that the dugouts needed repair, and that kids are having progress, so we need a larger field for. When I went back and looked at the July 6th selectmen's meeting, where it was first brought to the selectmen, and nobody was notified because it was just an appointment with the selectmen. The stated purpose was to bring in additional regional tournaments. So this might be more of a question for you, John, but why is that not consistent? You know, I am all for improving this for better parking, better quality of life in the neighborhood, and more safety for everybody, kids, the adults, the neighbors, everybody. But it's already oversaturated and not supported by enough parking with its current level of use. So I'd like to see that whatever is needed on for a proposed parking plan, that be used to address the current level of use, and that there be a pause and a time lapse before more tournaments, regional, state, whatever, are added to the mix and see what it does to the space. No,
Revenue,
maybe that's one mistake, but I wanted to bring it up here because this looks like it's preparing for the future
Yeah.
of more activity.
yes.
When at minimum, I think it's gonna just kind of help us, we're already doing now. Because 10 pounds and stuff is 5 pounds. Nothing.
Revenue.
That was my last thing. It's not a lot, not a deal.
Revenue.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Just a second. So would you just address the safety issue of spectators on that left-hand field there?
Sure.
In regard to parking lot, because she has a good point there.
Yeah,
That
so
fence is right at that parking lot.
we initially had this roadway coming in coming through this area here, but there's a lot of really nice mature trees in this location that we're trying to preserve with, you know, this layout. So we decided kind of last minute to maintain the existing roadway through here. And then, you know, in talking it over with Mr. Oden, our plan is to move the fence in along this line here, because you don't need this much battleground room. There will be more spectator room along this side, but there's spectator room along the right field side of what will be, you know, west field here. and there's gonna be spectator room for O'Brien Field along the left side and here. This plan actually improves spectator room considerably over the old layout. Westfield's current layout doesn't have any spectator room along, the left-hand side to speak of. It's kind of tied up against the wood line there. And all of the fields really butt up to the parking area currently along that whole center corridor. So there's no dedicated space. So there is a lot of conflicts currently with how, that occurs. People often park and watch from their car, or they'll back up and watch from the back of a vehicle. But it is in a parking space, so, it's being utilized, but it's in an area that's active. There's a lot of kids going through there, so we're trying to improve upon that. This plan is considerably better, from a spectator, standpoint. It's always tough, right? Because, concerns are raised at a meeting, revisions are requested, and we make plan changes. Mr. Hoden comes to our office and says, we need to look at this from a master plan standpoint. There was a lot of concerns raised. You make plan revisions to address concerns, and it leads to more speculation and more concerns, which is not, it's not intended, but it's a byproduct of a modification. It's a byproduct of a change. The reality is Swansea, Cal Ripken has been hosting regional tournaments for a long time. And I can say that firsthand. I've coached in regional tournaments in this facility probably for 8 years. And then we hopefully win here and go to a different facility and we go on and it was a great experience to play at home in your community and to have people there for the kids. And so I think the parking on those occasions, we're not changing the facility here, we're improving the facility. There's a parking concern that's been raised. We come to the table looking to address the concern, and we do it following standard engineering practices, safety protocols, addressing everything that we think is important and necessary. And that's why the parking is here. This is where the traffic is. The road is a road and it's a road, right? You bring, and there's already an existing parking lot here. Gravel parking areas in general shouldn't have internal landscape islands. They're really difficult to maintain. You shouldn't have a lot of them. You have them where it's critical, where there's turning movements occurring, because landscaping in those locations are different. Configuration of surface treatment helps people maneuver in the appropriate fashion. But erosion and sedimentation from a standpoint, this site is entirely self-contained. Everything generally drains to the site, but we will be following standard engineering, practices from an erosion and sedimentation control standpoint. I think the DPW director addressed that in his letter, and his recommendations are consistent with what we are anticipating and showing on the plans. This overall, I think, and I think it's hard not to see it, in my opinion, really takes a hard step in the right direction. Controlling parking along Mill Lane, controlling parking along the entrance here, controlling parking along South Road, bringing the spectators internally, making sure that, there's still emergency access. It's nice to hear that they don't need it to be a hard surface. So this area functions as, usable space. If there's concerns about people putting a pop-up tent or something through here, maybe that hard surface needs to stay, because that's what defines the travel way. If you make it all grass, people are going to use it accordingly. But we're willing to hear those comments and make some adjustments accordingly. The intention here is, the intentions here are great and I think are huge benefit to the community. Definitely, the people in this room have been adjacent to this facility for many years. I think we've made a lot of improvements here that we're looking to formalize and take action on. As long as we can get the, the funding or there can be some funding mechanism to make these happen. This is, there's a fair amount of improvements here. We'll certainly add, the fence, and there was a number of other things that we, talked about, relocate this entrance here, down the road. But landscaping is, that is a difficult component. We've received waivers on landscaping, on the internal parking configuration on a number of site plans for this board, for maintenance reasons, for sustainability reasons, and nothing changes. Roadway. And the beauty of this property is actually seeing the ball fields in the background. And seeing, in my opinion, seeing kids partaking in activities that are outside and active, and seeing the community come together on a town-owned property. This will be used as a parking area. But I think that gravel parking area does fit in a little bit better in the backdrop. And to think that adding some shrubs and landscaping is going to hide that is kind of missing. I think missing the the practical aspect of investing in those things requires some maintenance and some upkeep, and I don't think the town wants to have that burden. And I think it can be the recommendations from the road agent, DPW director, of doing swales along the perimeter and drainage on. That's perfect. It's going to function, just like a rain garden, something of that fashion along the perimeter of the parking. And certainly everything will be infiltrated and mitigated appropriately.
Okay,
Sure, I missed a couple things, but
I think you covered most of them.
okay.
You
This
won't be
gentleman has a
able to
question.
see the ballpark because every single fence around the ballpark will have signs all over it.
Yeah.
So you can't see through the signs, so you won't know whether there's a ballpark there or whether it's just a bunch of fence with a bunch of signs on it. That's number one.
Either way.
Number two, what's this, you made a statement an hour ago. This was gonna cost $300,000. What's it gonna cost the town?
The town is pledged to
Speak up.
That has nothing to do with the planning board. What it's gonna cost, who it's gonna cost, who's paying for it, has nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. It doesn't, it does not.
Bears on the fact that if this is gonna cost $300,000 of taxpayers' money, it's gonna be on the March warrant.
It probably will be, but that has nothing to do with what we're deciding tonight.
It's not enough one.
It has nothing to do with what we're deciding tonight. So we're looking at the site plan.
The dollars and cents are independently raised, so they're not raised in the town. So far to date, in the past 12 years, I've been the president, but over $250,000 have been put in by donations. This next $300,000, of which $150,000 plus is the fencing to go around those fields. That's the cost of the fencing plus a minimal amount of labor from that fence from Nick Smith. The majority of it's being donated. It's not coming out of the town budget.
Well,
I'm just telling you this straight up.
There are
how
private
would we even
entities.
know? If I hadn't asked that question, how would we even know? It's not listed anywhere. Nobody says anything.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's a private entity. The town owns the land, but a private entity is using the land.
Let's get back to the plan.
Yeah,
Okay?
you had.
I got one last thing to say. Promise.
I won't hold you to it.
On the application that I have a copy of given to me on July 28th. Numbers 9 and 10. One deals with traffic volume. And one deals with traffic movement. Neither, one was incomplete, the other one wasn't filled out at all. So there's no one in this room anywhere, including you, me, everybody, has any idea what the traffic movement is down there.
I think
What it
you
is
live around
on
there.
and off the property.
Don't you live there?
Sorry,
Don't you live around there?
I do.
Do you have an idea what the traffic is
I
like?
know it.
Then there's one person in this room that has idea about it. It's you.
It's too much,
Okay,
okay? So what I want to propose is
nothing be done about this application until somebody can get some figures of how many cars are involved. Because nobody knows
200 places.
if you've got 5 fields. You do the math and you do it quick, and Don, I don't know, okay, I'll be honest. You got 5 fields. And you've got 12 kids on a team. So you've got 24 kids to each field. You've got a couple of coaches, it's 26. You've got an umpire, it's 27 times 5. And that doesn't count the grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles. You're very quickly gonna come up to 150, 175 cars, which will fill that place up. Now, I don't know, do you stagger when they start, when they stop? Do some only play on Monday and some only play on Tuesday? And all that, so you never have 5 fields going at one time? I don't know that.
I will not say never. We're always gonna, we're never.
So,
Can I add some data to this?
huh?
I did a spreadsheet in preparation for the first round specific. I don't have a ton of copies. Watch my video.
It's important to point out that we're actually losing the kids.
I was just
And
thinking the
it's
same
an
thing.
existing condition. There's no need for a traffic. I mean, we can just stop right there.
Can I ask you a question while keep passing around the paper?
You can,
It used to be spring ball, summer ball, and fall ball. Now it's only spring ball. So how long is spring ball done? 2 months?
7 months.
So now we're doing all this work for 7 weeks worth of baseball.
200 parking stalls for 7 weeks.
For 7 weeks of baseball.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
yeah. What's your point though? What are you trying to say?
I'm just trying to wonder why all this changing the whole and making it work for everybody around the ball field for 7 weeks worth of baseball.
How does this make it worse? I thought they were improving.
Yeah, I mean, somebody just said.
Improving it to who?
Improving.
Improving it to who?
Sure. It's back to the
Yeah.
question of why are we doing this? Was it for health and safety or is it because we want to bring in more tournaments which generate revenue to the organization?
But the reason why isn't a purview by the board. You know, the reason why isn't what we're discussing tonight. We're discussing the site plan again, and you're talking about traffic.
I think the field's just too big. If it's for kids that are 7, 8, 9, and 10, and we hear that kids that are 16, 17 years old, obviously they're gonna hit the ball further, but that's almost intrusive, how much bigger the fields are getting all the way to the very end of our property or the roadway. Why are for a little kid that's 8 years old, why are the fields getting that much bigger?
Well, if we do nothing, just a second, Brad, if we do nothing at all, then it'll be status quo. You'll still have the 5 fields, you'll have baseball there, you'll have everything going on there without these improvements. You'll still have it. So
And I just want-
if they're trying to improve something, let them improve it.
I just want to address the fields, and I don't want there to be any confusion, right? The existing fields are too small. The proposed fields are on the small side of Cal Ripken's recommended standards for a baseball field. So we're showing a 200-foot arc in the middle.
Right.
That's the smallest field. And they don't recommend building to that standard. That's basically what the existing fields are. 220 is their recommended minimum, and they would like to see it go to 250 in center field. Which we're not doing. We're proposing improvements that fit with the existing topography and the constraints of the facility, but are also productive improvements based on recommended guidelines by Cal Ripken baseball.
So it's not the largest area, it's not the largest line outside, it's the one between.
Well, we're going, so the fence line is actually what's proposed for dimensions. So on this side, we're proposing to hold 200 feet along the right field line. Why? Because there's slopes there. Right? So we're not looking to get into a lot of the slopes. We're not looking to make those conditions worse. We're looking to make them better. As you go into center field, we're growing. It crosses this 220 line right here. we get into like 240-ish at center field, which is slightly smaller than what they recommend in center field. But it's what fits best for this facility, and it's still gonna be okay. You can address that.
So that's recommended for an 8-year-old to hit the ball 250.
These are 11 and 12-year-olds. These are 11 and 12-year-old major fields for power and baseball.
The difference between the 60 and the 70 on the majors.
A 60-foot field is typically a Babe Ruth field, which is a completely different.
Okay.
Let me just take a step back for us.
Little,
Let me take a step back here. The way in which the fields currently today are set up, of which the 3 smaller fields are set up, that would be West, that would be Chandler, and that would be Whitcomb, are set up in what's called 46-60. What that means is it's 46 feet from the tip of the pitching rubber to home plate. What the 60 means is that's the length of the base path. Home plate to first base, second base, third base, and back to home. When you go from ages 11 and 12, you play what's called 50-70. 50 feet from the rubber on the pitching mound to home plate for pitching, and 70-foot baselines. And all we go up to is age 12. There's nobody over the age 12 that can play in these fields legally. You can't host a game, you can't do any practice, I guess. Maybe the varsity got washed out, but there's never any kids older than 12 years old playing on these fields.
That's good to know.
Never. It's not allowed.
There's some pretty big kids, yeah.
It's not allowed. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
Right.
That, and a lot of that now, it really is accurate. If you put on the bats and formal type bats nowadays, they really do. We went from having to have ground, not being able to hit that fence, and having to fly over it.
And that might not be good.
Well, that fence runs all over.
The perception is obviously just doing this for somebody.
I'm letting him finish for a second.
So if you talk 46 to 60, that takes care of our rookies and our team ball, it's 800. Our 9s, 10s play as 46, 60s, some of them come tournament time, come other games, we have a transition period where they play 57. 50, 70, 50, 70, 50, 70, these will be convertible so we can play the smaller teams here. These will never be convertible, these are flat, they have no pitching mounts. Somebody mentioned 16-year-old. As soon as you hit at any level, Little League, down to age 13, you have to play 60-90. 60 feet for the pitching mound, 90 feet for the baseball field, which is the only field in town that has that set up for the pitching mound, would be at Manatic Regional High School. It's the only field. So, I'm gonna be very clear, 12 and under program, nothing older than that plays on these fields.
Thank
Including
you.
organizations that you might make a
What about the junior swamp bet?
Junior swamp, that's 12 and under. What?
Junior swap bets at 12 and under.
12 and under.
Yeah.
13 and under automatically go to Marble. They have a signed deal with Marble. We have a signed deal 12 and under for here.
Can I ask the fence that's coming out right at the end of my driveway?
What your name, sir?
Rick Naylor, N-A-Y-L-R.
Rick Naylor?
this one here, sir.
Yeah, how tall is that fence?
I think these are 4-foot fence. Yeah,
Okay, so it's not too intrusive, not like with big backstops or anything.
right. And it's a 4-foot fence because it's at the 220 distance. The reason why the fence gets taller on some of the fields like pole is because it's not that deep. And so
So
you
there'll
gotta-
still be trees that are starting to go up beyond that fence, so it's, you just don't see just the fence there, it's gonna be, because there's trees right there abutting the road, going up the hill.
But you're talking about the tall trees.
Yeah.
The tall trees are being removed. That's a that's a town project. It's years overdue. That didn't get continued on with the
I
price.
see some of it, right?
You already had the trees farther down in front of Neil's house that got taken down. So those are coming down. Let me be really clear here on this tree line.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have it, it's not marked out today.
Yeah.
As we move past conceptual into the things will get marked out, Douglas will get marked out by Chad and his team. But this area here, we're not interested in having parking there. We'll do whatever we have to, like we did in front of Mr. Blood with the no parking sign. But I think it's really important to understand that the the use of the facility, whether it's for the soccer field here or here or here, or the 2 soccer fields here or 2 here, or the 1 over here. This is not just a baseball aspect. The byproduct is a concern that Ashley and I have talked to ad nauseum for the past 3 days, for 2 hours every day, with Joe DeRusso, Mike Brantley, and everybody there at Town Hall, that we need to be prepared for the 400 housing units. That's a totally different topic from here tonight, but I'm telling you, we're looking at it from the soccer standpoint, and what we can play in color, what we can invest in color, we can invest in the South Shore fields. Without blowing up the whole place and blacktopping it, which is totally unsanitary, whatever you want to call it, ridiculous. That's not what we're going for. Joe DeRusso sat in our meeting with Ashley and I and says he would prefer it not to be that hard. He'd prefer crushed gravel for maintenance purposes. He would prefer crushed gravel for the cost and the workability for all this, and to have somewhat of a more natural feel than coming in and blacktopping. I mean, if we want to go to blacktop, we can go live on Talbot Hill. I don't have blacktop where I live. Whether or not that's good or bad, that's neither here nor there. But I'm going to get really back to this whole topic. The topic that Kristen asked about, and I'm very transparent with the selectmen, and I would be vigilant to anybody. We were given the opportunity to host a tournament.
Yeah.
And one father said he would pay for the field to be converted. We didn't get the tournament. It was a byproduct. Came back to the board with Ashley, and we sat there for hours. And you can ask Mike Brantley. I'm not excited about this project for one reason. The cost has tripled. Sarah, you were there part of the conversation. It tripled. It's what the board wants. It's what the community wants. The people came to us and said, we're going to help you support and build this facility and build for the community. But you've got to solve your parking. Number one, get it so it's along the highway. He happens to get a phone call after Mike Brantley, Joe DeRusso, and a few others go to the state, and the state says, we'll give you all the no parking signs you want, have at it. Right? So they're gonna make all of that road no parking.
You think it'll be hard for us to get on to Mill Lane with people coming out of the parking lot on?
I'm gonna say at the end of one game, maybe,
Yeah.
but
In
other
January,
than-
Exactly what's happening now, it will be an improvement.
Right.
and the
Because
biggest,
it's only one spot you have to walk.
right, exactly. And the biggest thing that Chad talked about, you know, I said to Ashley, this is Chad, Mr. Brandon, that he was this.
Yeah.
He's been asking for this for a decade.
It will help. I see it.
So this moving this off the corner,
Yeah.
making it so that this is fenced in and funneling the traffic. You can only get so many cars out in a minute.
I agree. We have parking
Well,
problems
and-
going up that road.
And it's really not gonna be a huge impact in the getting out, because this is the stop condition. So if you're on Mill Road coming down, they stop for you,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't impede existing traffic. It just takes them a little bit longer to leave, and there's gonna be a little bit more activity here, for sure. I mean, but there's activity here right now, and there's activity here, there's activity up here.
It'll definitely take.
You know, it's gonna improve the whole area.
I don't know if you've noticed it, but Ashley and I were in a meeting with Joe again, yesterday before. What do you say, first 100 feet? First 50 feet? Don't quote me, but I'm the first number of feet here because of that lip there.
Yeah.
That's going to be paved along with the project,
For the whole cul-de-sac.
the cul-de-sac up,
Green bases.
going up farther up, that's been torn up all summer.
Yeah.
Continental wouldn't do it, so the folks from Mitchell, whatever they're called now, all states are paving this, and they're paving that corner when they finish Sawyer's Crossing, which is happening tomorrow.
Good.
So all I can say to you is that we got a charge last time we were here 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, to define the parking. I mean, if you folks come to me and say you want to change it, I'm going to struggle with it. I'm going to personally, but because I really think that you're going to find a lot of, however we control it here. And Chad's only put in two spots. If we put in 3 spots, we lose another spot for handicap, whatever it might be. This has been traditional handicap parking. That's where they fall. And the homeowners and the grandparents have a dents in their cars. They're not gonna have any dents because Chad kept the trees and he got rid of that. Similarly here, This is where the little kids who have a multitude of kids sit in the back of their car while they watch the kids play here. And we've done this with the fence to delineate that. Joe DeRusso in the meeting, Public Works Director, said to both Ashley and I, he said, wow, I hope you get 10 years out of that split rail fence. He's been in this business a long time. He's been a state cop runner. He said, I think it's gonna rot before then. But he's, okay. So he was very upfront and very straightforward. So I'm gonna say, I don't know when it was, Mr. Naylor, but we put a bunch of rocks there to try to serve the parking a number of years ago. And it didn't work. A guy with a Toyota had a $7,000 bill and he tried to send it to us. So we got an agreement, the town, we put up a fence to try to solve it. This now is all being connected, it's all gonna drain. My passion here is the safety aspect. You go and ask Lee Dunham, if any of you know him, I asked, first off the bat, how do we get rid of the stuff in the middle of the lane? There, when I became president 12 years ago, because there was way too many kids running back and forth. And just trying to solve it. And, you know, Ashley and some folks said, well, I got a 4-year-old. I don't want to have to take my 4-year-old from this field to here, go to the back. Would you mind taking the porta potty that was here, put it here? I got a problem with it. I'll try to keep them as hidden as possible. When we put it up here next to the building or something, yeah, we can think about it, we'll work with it. And the two here get a tremendous amount of use. And a lot of it's because that's where a lot of people have their custody exchange with their kids, with their split families and what have you. But my passion here is to make this a destination for the town of Swansea to use, not only for baseball, but for soccer.
And maybe sledding.
The sledding aspect, I have less flexibility standing here in front of you tonight, and I said it this week. Is because the $300,000 doesn't come from nowhere. The people that are wanting this are not wanting to do it time after time after time after time. We're not going for irrigation. We can't support irrigation. They tried to do irrigation 15, 20 years ago, and it didn't work. But if you're gonna put money into it, why keep tearing it up if you can keep the dogs off? That's the biggest pet peeve from a sanitary aspect. And from the permanent aspect, it works a lot better than the temporary aspect, because we buy temporary fencing every year, and it hasn't worked.
Permanent, people are just gonna go in there more with permanent fencing. I don't think the permanent versus temporary fencing is valid with the dog. Deal with the dog, get it, the dog, policy, what have you, but, you know, the fencing is separate
Okay.
from the dog.
We got it. Yes, sir.
So the fencing issue can be addressed. You don't need to remove it till fall. At that point, the ground's frozen for the dogs for not chewing up the fields or whatever. As far as that goes with the dogs, I think it would be a shame that you lose the best sledding place in Swansea, the safe sledding place. I think that should be addressed. I think that's a little bit too arrogant to say that we're going to just dismiss all those people when you could put, you know, sonotubes in with some holes that they plug, pop the fence in and take out, you know, a 100-foot section. I think that could be very easily addressed. Overall, I think, you know, I've been here, I've lived here for 38 years. We've come to every one of these meetings, and as a point of, I need to make a note, I tried for half an hour to get on the 28th meeting to Zoom, and I said I was the only one there and I couldn't get in because I wasn't able to come. And I did try, just so you're aware. But I think as a rule, we've all voiced our complaints about parking. I think this gentleman has done a tremendous job in coming up with an intelligent solution to get the cars there. It's absurd the way some of these people park. You can't fix stupid. You know, there's always going to be some people that are going to come if you put no parking signs. You know, you put a fence on the corner because the problem was there and the idiots are parking where the no parking sign is in the road. So, you know, you've done a great job of making it safe. Getting in and out of middle lane would be a lot better. You've addressed that. You know, the ball fields as a whole are a lot more improved than what they are. You know, are the people still going to be coming up middle lane smoking? Yes, they are. That's the people. That's not the, you know, that you're going to have no matter what happens. That's just gonna happen. You know, are the people gonna come up through the trees and pee there, stand there peeing, and we see them standing there, you know? Yeah, you know, you have slob people and disrespectful people everywhere. We're still gonna have some of that. That comes to a little bit of enforcement. Maybe that's the police department to enforce. But I think we as neighbors have to agree, this is a much improved plan. There are going to be some minor things like you're talking about. When you try to turn around, oops, I'm sorry. When you get a bigger stick, when you try to turn around, they're going to run into some of those problems. The only thing that my only concern that I ask is this, is it's a lot of money. It's a major investment. We all have a major investment in our properties too. So the only concern I have is when going forward with this, does this project not start until the paving can be addressed so that we're not adding the new bigger fields and, oh, well, we don't have the funding for the paving in the beginning. How do we get accountability that we're not creating a worse situation for 2 years because we only have half of the funding?
What
How
paving?
do we know that we can, how do we control the fact that, okay, really kind of the priority is you have to create a new field because you're losing one, but you've got to do the parking at the same time. Is that something that we can avoid a major disaster of getting half of it done and not getting funding for 2, 3, 4 years?
What paving are you referring to? And
Well,
what
I'm
funding?
paving parking, excuse me. Parking.
The parking.
Yeah.
Okay, and now that threw the whole point off. So they have parking shown on there. That's
Right,
that's
but I'm saying, how do we, how do we have guarantee that the parking will be done early on as opposed to getting the ball fields redone, new ball fields, but we don't have the money to get the parking and the fencing and everything?
It's all part of the site plan. The parking will be put in if it's on the site plan, the ball field will be put in if it's on the site plan. The code enforcement officer oversees all of that happening there and gives them, I'm not sure if it's a CO in this particular case, but in most cases it is to operate. And that's how that will be taken care of, you
Is
know.
there a timeline tied to executing a full site plan? Like a time limit? Because I think that's what he's saying.
I missed your point. What do you mean? Executing?
it's
You mean
two-
finishing it?
This is what Kristen comments. It's a 2 to 3 year plan, is what you said. And I think the feeling or the fear, which I share, is that the money that's fundraised first will go into making the bigger fields, and we're gonna be left with the current parking problem with newer fields while the parking waits.
Only
So
works.
So let me just stop right there. The parking is the least expensive portion. The least expensive portion.
So do it first.
So
No,
there's,
you can't do it that way in terms of logistically aspect. If you do that, then what happens if we only get one field built and we go to the temporary aspect and we use it for parking short term? I mean, we're already giving up one field for a program that's been successful, and the same thing would happen with soccer. So we need to look at this as a aspect to get things done and moving forward. And the best time to get this whole project done is this fall, and the parking is going to be done along with the commitment from the town to help with the parking. So if you don't think the party is going to happen because that, I beg to differ. And, you know, at the same point in time, we're not putting a shovel in the ground until there's a substantial amount of money. Because, you know, although I have a great relationship with Nick Smith and his wife Carol, who's my favorite oncology nurse, they're not going to fund this project. If I don't have the 150,000 to move forward, it's not going to move forward. And once you get the other aspects done, Mr. Fletcher and the concrete, the wood that's been donated, the roofing that's been donated, those are all ancillary aspects to the project. And then the parking. We couldn't operate if we built the field and didn't have any parking. It would not.
well, we can't operate as a neighborhood if you build the fields and then it takes 2 years to get the parking. So
But
get
again,
the fences because as it is, the parking has been an ongoing, consistent, major issue.
Yeah, we got
Town meetings and everything else. So we have to have some accountability. We're saying it's a good plan, but it can't be a 5-year plan that makes the situation a hell of a lot worse for 3 years. That's the concern.
So,
Okay, thank you.
let me be very clear here, and perhaps I misspoke. These have to be done in parallel path, the parking and the fields. They can't be done independently. They have to be done together, otherwise it's not, we can't operate.
Good.
There's no other way to do it.
That's fine.
So there's your answer.
That-
That's your answer right there.
All right,
Okay.
so that's on the record that it's done that way.
That is correct.
So if it doesn't, we can come back and say, it was stated, it's on the record,
You can.
we can hold them accountable. That's all we're trying to do.
But I would just like to clarify
You got
one
that
thing,
right.
one thing. And I might be misspeaking and correct me if I am. They may do one of these fields and still utilize like West Field the way it is currently. Because to do both fields at the same time could be a large endeavor, but as soon as you do one of these fields, you have to do this because these fields actually move into the existing parking area. Right?
Fair enough.
But I don't want everybody to think it's all happening at once. Like when you raise money and you do stuff, you do it to be careful, right? So the funds would be appropriated to the field and through the town and Swanson and Ripon, they would come together for the parking. That would likely be, let's say, phase one. And I think it would be O'Brien Field first, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be this field here and this parking here. And that would, once there's enough money raised for these two components, it starts. And
And there's a good chance you could do that this fall for next spring's.
there is a good, that's the hope, absolutely.
That depends on the approval process.
If we land on too many of these meetings,
The meeting is over.
you might have that for another year.
Okay, is anybody have anything different that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, the park, I just wanted to briefly explain the spreadsheet that I passed out on
Yeah.
parking, because I attempted to take some emotion out of it for myself by coming up with this little spreadsheet of how do you figure out how many parking spaces you need for a field? And what I did, you can see, I kind of wrote out my thought process. I won't, get your magnifying glasses out. I apologize for that. But basically, I looked at the number of kids per team on the current 2022 team roster. Teams seem to be either 9 kids or 12 kids. There's a couple of outliers, but it's either 9 or 12. Did some multipliers in terms of like how many coaches that might not be parents. Did some multipliers per child, min, max. Figuring some kids have 1 car tied to them, some kids might have 4. So try to get some, averages of averages. Number of spaces needed per team, per game, per field. Add in, a couple of handful for a day long.
What's the bottom line?
The bottom line is, if people agree with my methodology, this is purely just trying to apply some common sense to the approach. I don't know if there's actual professionals who do this for a living. It would be nice to have someone do a study on it. That would probably need about 50 spaces per field.
Okay, and you said that's your opinion. You're
That's
not
my
a professional
opinion,
at all,
but
and we've got that
my
information.
point on this is, back to what someone said earlier, was do we have some true analysis on what kind of parking is needed to support the level of activity that this space is being designed for? And I
Well-
think that's a big unanswered.
And this is an existing use.
Right, it's a problem now.
And it's a problem now, and they're addressing that problem as far as we can see anyway.
Right, so
They've
let's-
done what we've asked them to do. By addressing it, it's a board decision to decide whether it's good enough or not. And as far as the traffic study goes, again, it's not a new use being put in here. It's the same exact use that was in there before. So it's kind of you to do the traffic study for us, and we can take it under advisement, but we probably are not going to have a traffic study done on here. And we're going to see probably how this plan works out. Does anyone have anything different to add? You do.
Two really quick.
Your name, please.
I'm Ashley Crosby of the Relocating
Thank
the
you.
Playground. We don't have the current leach field map on there. I'm not really sure it is, but does that overlap where the regular, the movement of Chandler's gonna go?
It's on this plan. Well.
Well, no, 'cause I think we only have the proposed system.
Yeah, it's actually located here underneath the or close to the sign,
Okay.
we do know where it is.
I was gonna say, well, because we were having a debate on if it was over here or if it was down
No,
over here.
it's in the outfield, the lane field here,
Yeah,
and this location right here. We located it, back when we did the design.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's been accounted for in.
but won't that be where you're moving the field to?
No,
That field is getting straightened out.
Oh, it's going straight down. Okay, so it's still
but
considered.
it can, the field can go over the septic.
I just wouldn't worry about construction.
That's no problem. Parking, if the parking went onto it, then we'd have to look at a different type of field, because it wouldn't sustain. But, and I will just say that we are the professionals that typically do a traffic evaluation. And when we look at existing sites like this, there are a number of dynamics that come into play. And we believe this plan here does provide ample parking for this facility. In fact, I think we have more parking here, but we want there to be more parking for that, occasional tournament, so that we don't have a lot of these concerns that you've been experiencing over time. And I will say that, and I coached here for many, many years. I still go to this facility to have a hamburger and watch kids play baseball. And I go there with my kids who, have graduated from this field, but it's still a great place and a lot of nice people come here from the community. And there, there is plenty of parking, that'll be provided for here on an average basis. But what I was gonna say is, it's kind of sad to see how many kids actually get dropped off and their parents don't stay for games. And this ends up being a kid's outlet and a place for them to have an experience that they might not be having at home. And so there are many times during a baseball game where half the parents aren't there. And, so you could have a situation where there's unfortunately not enough people there, in my opinion, supporting, the youth and their
It's
kids.
not the kids, it's not the kids. Fall, see, that's all.
Right, but I'm just saying from the calculations that we run into this, they tend to be, your numbers are very conservative, and I think it's great that you look at that. What it shows is even in a worst case scenario, we're not far off on this improved plan. And so we're gonna be in really good shape here. And we believe there's ample parking on this plan. So,
Okay, thank you.
Every year. About 20% of the kids. Are new. And there's 40 parents. Of those, or percentage of those parents that need to know how to park there, when to park. And none of that's ever done.
It will be now. They will know. They'll see the lines in there. They'll see the parking lot and they'll have signs, from what I understand. They'll know where to park more so than they do now, right? Okay, you had a question?
They don't,
And it-
they don't know how to park at Walmart or at Walgreens, so why would they know how to do that at the ball field?
I said, I don't like getting back to some concerns that came up as we kind of walked through things regarding the parking lots. So I agree with you about the dog, that's a problem. So if we're going to the selectmen asking for no dogs in there, that's gonna be a set in stone thing. The parking lot, and we also have it put in there that there's no smoking in the lot, music or drinking, things like that, so that can additionally be enforced.
There is
It's
no.
already there.
I just would like
Ordinance is
signage,
already
right?
there.
I would like something to be in that lot as far as the signage goes, where at least that can be enforced, if I can just anticipate that being an issue.
Well, the town has put up signs on most of their town property that I know of, no use of tobacco products and so on and so forth, and I'm assuming it should be. If you have nothing new, then we can move on.
I would just make the comment that Mr. Blood is right in terms of the educational aspect. And we're gonna do everything in our power with signage, and with instructions. And
Okay, thanks.
And then just a quick follow-up with
Yep.
that landscaping discussion, I know we kind of, it seemed like we got off that, so is the board still gonna consider any sort of minimal landscaping in that lot, islands and things like that?
We'll see what the board considers. You'll hear it when we discuss it. Anything else new?
Yeah, actually, I
Will
want.
you identify yourself, please?
Robert Lurivier.
I'm sorry, the last name?
Lurivier.
Thank you.
I actually live across the street. We actually just moved in, I have a year and a half old. And me and my wife love walking around the baseball fields, watching games and stuff like that, and we absolutely love it. A point that Kristen made before was the PA boxes or announcement boxes, whatever, they're not on the plans. Is that something that's still happening, or, I did hear that there might be lights that we want to go up or something.
If it's not on the
Maybe
plan, it's
not,
not
I
going up.
don't know. This is the first time I've been hearing about it. My neighbor told me about it, and
Well, if it's not on the plan, it's not gonna be on. No,
Okay.
lights aren't on.
And then again with the batting cages, they're jungles right now. So why do we need to possibly add another one if there's trees and shrubbery and everything in the ones that we have now?
Again, it isn't the question as why we need to add it. If the applicant wants to add it and it's on the site plan, it's up to the board to decide, okay, is it gonna fit there and it's gonna meet. the site plan.
And I understand that, but if we don't use the ones that we have now, why is there even a question of possibly adding another one, or that they want to add another one?
Because it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, it has.
But it is relevant because they don't use the ones that they have now. There's trees going through them.
We're not even in season, we haven't used the facility in 60 days.
All those trees. are-
There's trees that are 10 feet tall in there.
We pick them up every fall.
No, you don't.
Well,
So you're calling it a liar?
Yes, we didn't take them out this year at all. There's a.
So we take them out last fall?
just address your concerns to me, and I'll address it to whoever needs to be addressed.
I mean, I can tell you firsthand that every one of those batting cages gets used in season. Maybe they didn't get cleaned to the level that they normally have, but they all get used and when you have teams that, there's actually schedules for those batting cages because of the number of teams that use that facility, community, kids that use the facility, where you have, they schedule practices on field, they schedule practice times in the cages, and so they definitely get used. Normally, field cleanup cleans up all the cages. And so, the fifth cage is added, and because it's a future plan, the master plan has been requested, and so when and if a fifth cage is deemed to be needed, it needs to be on the plan so that it can be constructed without having to come back here, and go through the process. And that area has been allocated for a fifth cage, and it will be, as long as we're successful in getting an approval, it'll be constructed when and if it needs to be needed. We don't need to talk about the weeds and stuff in there, but I can tell you that they do all get used.
Can I ask a process question? Because we've been asking a lot of like why and enforcement and kind of those kinds of.
Ask it.
Are those types of questions the selectmen that they need to bring it to, as opposed to the site plan and the planning board?
Which question, name, state the
Who's
question.
gonna enforce the parking? Who's gonna enforce the no smoking?
That's
Who's
selecting,
gonna enforce the leave?
anything enforcement is selectmen. The planning board has no authority to enforce
And
any of these
why
site
do we
plans.
need a bigger field? All of that, the whys and the enforcement.
All those whys has nothing to do with planning board as well. The why could be, why do we need another apartment house that they're building down here? That's a bunch of whys, but they're building in anyway. So,
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I just.
mhm.
Was there any added PA systems, or I know there's scoreboards being added, but sometimes it's really loud over there. Is there gonna be like more than one field, like constantly announcing all four of the games through tournaments? Is there?
The PA is only used for championship games or playoff games when, as required by coverage and for introduction. And that's really only in the month of June.
Okay.
Oh, that's just for the introductions. Okay.
And it's the month of June.
And it's
That's-
portable, of course. So we talked about it at the last meeting, and subsequently had a conversation with Mike Bradley and Ashley and I talked about it. And at this point in time, based on space, we're gonna go with the portable at this point in time. Not only that, it's cost. And trying to make everything fit into the space that we have provided on that land. And it's far more important that we have more usable space for the kids than having a scoring gap. The people who swing may not agree with me, because they get involved by the parent, but that's what we chose.
Okay, thank you, that's good.
Okay. And that about wrap it up for new questions. We're gonna keep the public hearing open. We aren't gonna close the public hearing. So if you think of something at another point, there'll probably be another meeting. But anyways, anything new for this tonight? And I don't think so. Anything new from the board? So if not, let's just take a look at a few of the points here. We need to have them add a few things onto the site plan, which again is why the public hearing is going to remain open. For one thing, they haven't shown that roadway is paved. They'd rather not pave it, so that can be taken off as being paved up there. That roadway between, between the batting, yeah, in the gates there.
Yeah, we're just showing it as gravel, but
As
I
gravel,
think they
I
actually
think-
want us to eliminate.
Yeah,
the
and
road.
so that needs to be just taken off the site plan as gravel, just put on as grass, I guess. Another thing, the gate to the west fields, that was a gate through the fencing. I think it was to access those fields.
It is.
That needs just to be shown on the plat.
We have no issues with that.
Okay, show that on plat. And members jump in if I'm wrong on the stuff.
No, it's all right.
Gates and the fencing to access the field.
It's access those two fields to the north.
To the north.
Yeah,
Can I just interject that we will put all the gates on there as, so for all the fields,
Yeah.
they're not delineated currently, this season.
okay, but what we're doing here is we're noting things that are not on the site plan that we need to have on the site plan before we can approve it.
I still think all the gates are on currently, that's why.
Yeah, so I-
okay.
We'll get the gates.
Okay, thank you. And let's see,
Mr. Chairman, may
Yeah.
I just ask a procedural question?
you may.
And we can go down through the list, but it would be, I mean, important for a schedule and increasing the likelihood that this can happen this fall. If there's a way, as long as there's not anything large, there's a way that the board can consider these conditions of approval. And we'd be glad to come back to the board for a compliance hearing, showing these revisions. And that would allow us to go to the selectmen's meeting and hopefully secure an approval this evening so that we can, I mean, because time is really becoming critical in order to allow this improvement to happen, this calendar year. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I just, if there's gonna be a mindset when you walk through that, I'm hoping it can be with a condition of approval.
Yeah, well, a compliance hearing definitely is an alternative to do, yeah. And the board can decide whether we want to have people come in for a compliance hearing. Let's see, gate to the west fields and to move that entrance to that parking lot, down maybe 40 feet. You said you could move it maybe 40 feet down. Just show that on the plat. And let's see, and if you can move the fence on the left, what is it? It's one of the north fields, but for spectators, you said you could move the field away from that parking area, so spectators could be against that field. If you can show that on the plat too. Anybody else?
That same suggestion, there was some
Fence on this side,
Oh, yeah.
as opposed to be.
That's right, exactly. That fence that needs to be extended on Putt Drive, I guess that is.
Yeah, 75 feet.
Yep, that needs to be shown on the plat.
Okay.
Right, thank you. What else? Anything else?
O'Brien Field, the one that has the fence moving away from the parking. That's Westfield.
In this Westfield, I don't know if this is for us or not, but the removal section.
Yeah, we can, I think we can put that as an advisement. I don't know that we can actually tell them that they have to have a removable fence there for sledding. It'd be nice if they could keep it up for sledding, but I don't know. if the planning board has the authority to say that, yes, you have to have that. We can put it as a recommendation, I think,
Then the selectmen can make it.
but not as a requirement.
Then the selectmen would make a change.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the applicant said that they would be willing to come in for a compliance hearing. And that means that we can close the public hearing if we want to and decide it tonight. And with those conditions, and then they come back for a compliance hearing, see if their conditions are met on the plat. And they aren't too severe, really. It's smaller stuff on there.
Is this a condition or condition?
This is not a, yeah, this is not a conditional approval, it's approval with conditions. So conditional approval, again, I think it was when, it's like, waiting for an approval from the state or something like that.
Permit.
Yeah, permit that the board has nothing to do with. But the approval with conditions would be these conditions here we're naming, and they have to be added to the plat before it's actually finally signed. But we can approve it with those conditions, meaning it's approved and they can get going on it. Yes,
Should we be including the access permit for South Road?
oh, is there a driveway permit? Oh, that's from the state, isn't it?
There is a driveway
Yeah.
permit and I've had kind of preliminary review with that. And it doesn't appear as though there'll be any issues. I think they are welcoming and controlled and entrance onto the site.
60 years.
That's from the state.
Yeah, we do need a DOT permit.
Okay.
So that would have to be.
Following that spot, they had agreed to move the entrance onto South Road down about 30 feet. We have that shown.
We're in there. Yeah, I think that's parking lot, right? Yeah, parking lot.
Right.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we got that. Okay, so
There's something else that I, somewhere I came across this and maybe. Chad, was it along South Road? Did I not see something about posting for a ball field? You know, like, please slow down ball field or something like that, one of these plats.
It wasn't on one of our plats.
I think we might have talked about it at some point, but we also talked about it being a state road and the state.
State would have to approve it.
State, yes or no? Yes,
But
ma'am.
in regards like the state has no interest in changing it from passing zone or the 40 mile speed limit. They're offering the parking signs and that's about
Okay,
it.
thank
See
you.
from that.
Which is unfortunate.
Yes, but
I agree.
again,
I wish you would hurry.
yep, state road, and state road. We can still petition them to do what the planning board can. You know, whether
The
they do it or
selectmen
not.
petition the DOT chair
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, whether they do it or not, that's a different story, but yeah, it's be nice. if They would. All right, so. So it looks like if the board agrees, then we can close the public hearing and decide this with conditions.
We're not doing anything about the fence for sledding or anything like that.
The planning board can put it as a recommendation, in my opinion, but they cannot put it as a requirement. You know, they can't really dictate something like that. We can require, we can dictate safety issues and drainage issues and all the site plan issues that we normally do, but for a part-time sliding fence, probably not. We can put it as a recommendation.
By
It's
way
a
of,
great community
by way of
connection.
example,
Go ahead.
by way of example, it looks like Major League Baseball parks have 6 or 8 inch padding on the outfield wall.
Yeah.
Can we recommend
Oh, I see. what you're saying.
something akin to that? So that when kids come sledding, they have
Yeah.
some cushioning.
We can recommend that, and we can recommend removable fence, you know, recommend all of that type of stuff there, but again, it's up to the.
The kids are gonna go sleigh riding no matter what. we
Yeah,
do.
you know, I think it's good that they can sleigh right down there.
And if we can put up some kind of cushion for them.
Yeah, but that can be a recommendation, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah, we can. we can
That would
recommend
be a
something.
liability issue that might want to be considered because.
Yeah,
the
it
reason-
may be, but
the
it'll
reason-
be considered by the selectmen and not the planning board, because if the planning board does it, it's just a recommendation, we aren't requiring it. So is it an agreement that we're gonna close the public hearing? Yep. Nothing else to say? Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing then, because the applicant, plaintiff, I almost said. The applicant would like to come back for a compliance hearing. What that means is that when we close the public hearing, and if we approve it with conditions, then those conditions that have to be on the plat, he has to come back for another public hearing. We have to notice it again to all of you, that everything that we require on the plat is on the plat, but it'll be, the public hearing will be closed and it'll be done with for that regard. Yes,
I have one additional request.
Yeah.
Because the conditions are minor.
Mhm.
Can we continue, and since this is a notice public hearing now, can we just notice that there will be a compliance hearing?
No, not according,
I'm just asking,
but not according to the RSA.
okay,
It has to be a notice meeting all out to the abutters for a
Okay.
compliance hearing.
no,
Even though we mentioned it at this meeting, it has to be like that.
all right, I just thought I would ask.
Yep. Yes.
Before you close.
Yeah.
I had a question for Chad. Is it absolutely impossible that he could give up a couple or 6 parking spaces in that lot and put in some shrubs?
Well, we actually, I mean, we're proposing that on the end caps. And, you know, where this is shown as white here, that would be like a little landscaped area
Oh,
there. And so we'd rather not give up any more
oh, I see.
than that. And I think parking is, you know, it's like conflicting comments, right? You have enough spaces, you not. I mean, this is where we want people to go.
Right.
And I think, you know, if we move the entrance down 40 feet, we'll put some, you know, we'll put something, you know, in those areas to make sure that the traffic is moving appropriately in there. But outside of that, we don't want to lose any more parking.
I see. I didn't understand if those would be,
Can that be indicated that is landscaping, because we also did say earlier that we had more than enough spots there.
Yes.
So it is kind of a conflicting statement from the other side as well, that we have more than enough. So 6 spots losing for shrubbery, I don't see the problem.
We'll talk about it. The board will discuss it after the public hearing is closed.
okay.
Could I just start?
You have a question?
And that's jump out here, and they're gonna be another.
They're still gonna have to deal with it. They're still gonna have to.
And that's.
I know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comment from the board members, then I'm gonna close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Okay, so the public hearing is closed. The public hearing is closed, so we're gonna deliberate here. You can stick around for that or whatever you want, but just don't talk too loud here. So we have those, the conditions, and the conditions again are. Pardon me? Yeah, let's let the noise calm down for a minute here.
Oh, really?
Okay, Beverly, would you read what you have for our conditions?
I have the roadway in the center needs to be taken off the flat shown as gravel since it is grass.
It'll be grass, right? Yep,
Gates on fencing to access the 2 fields to the north.
yep,
Move entrance west by 30 or 40 feet.
yep, to the west, right, yep.
West. Move fence away from parking next to West Field.
Yeah, that was where that parking was right there for spectators there. Yeah, that was Westfield there, right? Move that parking and the parking needs to be moved northerly. So
Yeah.
let's just add that in there. Move the fence northerly.
Fence northerly.
Yeah. On that,
Away from parking.
away
next
from
to
parking,
West
yeah,
Field. Okay. Extension of fence on Putt Drive.
yep. And
And then applicants return for compliance hearing.
what was the distance? Was it
75.
75 feet? We need to put the distance down in there on that.
70 extension of fence on Putt Drive to 75 feet.
Yeah,
Oh, the extension,
Additional 75.
75-foot extension, that's what we need to
Yes.
say. Okay, got that.
okay, and driveway permit from the state?
Oh, I didn't have that.
Going back to this, is there some sort of incursion that she mentioned that you?
There was something dumped, or sand or gravel or something dumped over here on the property.
There was something
Okay.
in reference to fence, there was some incursion into the property line.
There might be, yeah. I don't know. That Maybe, but again, that's probably an enforcement issue and not a planning board.
They
issue.
should go to Mike and
Yeah.
look at it.
Okay, so those are the conditions to approve the plot. And they would have to come back for a compliance hearing whenever they're ready to come back for compliance.
Yeah, I have applicants return for compliance hearing as a condition.
Yep. Okay, that's good. They will, I think we might as well put it in there as a condition. Yep.
So this, because of this precludes them from starting anything until they come back with compliance. Or does it?
They can continue with their permits, I guess the driver permit mainly is one of them, but they can start the process because it's actually an approval, but the approval doesn't become final until they come back to the compliance hearing, the chairman signs it, and then it's final, but for all intents and purposes, it's an approved plat. If the planning board approves it.
They need this done in order to go to the select board. next
Well,
week.
that's true
The
too.
paperwork.
Right, yeah.
So what should be short order for when they come back for compliance.
What should you, the compliance hearing can be after they go to the select.
Yeah, that's what I said, should be short.
Oh,
order.
okay.
So I think point of order, I think if the selectmen approves, they can begin construction even if they haven't come to the compliance hearing.
I think they can anyway, if the planning, as the board, if the board approves it, even though it's not a finalized approval signed. by the board.
And this, what I'm saying is, as long as then the selectmen then
Oh,
also
I see,
approve it,
Yeah,
then they can begin
They can't start
construction
till
at that point, even though there's going to be a compliance hearing.
that's right.
The selectmen have the final approval, they can't do anything till they get the selectmen.
That's
Will
right.
the selectmen be made aware of our conditions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Before they do anything?
They will.
And last but not least, we want to make a recommendation. I think the board wants to make a recommendation for the fence along the northerly part of Westfield where the sliding is. If they could consider a removable fence there or consider padding on that fence, something to leave it open for recreation in the wintertime as well as it is in the summertime.
How do you want, that's not going to be part of the motion though.
No, that's just a recommendation.
That's, I have that in here.
Oh, you have it in there?
I
Okay,
do have it in here, it's just part of the minutes, so do you want to do something separate with it?
I would, yeah. Well, I don't know, the board.
If you enter the motion, put in recommendation that either a temporary fence or padding be put on the fence.
Let's keep it clean. Let's keep the motion to the conditions, decide on that, and then the planning board can do another motion that is recommended to the.
There you
selectmen
go.
to do. Okay.
That, this whole area is considered for recreational use. If we put up a permanent fence there, then it's hindering recreational use specifically off of that hill.
It is, yeah, it is, but, again, the planning board cannot require them to stop putting that or not put that there. So let's get back to the motion.
Okay.
So, a motion with the conditions that Beverly already stated, and we all heard those conditions, right, would be in order.
Make a motion that we move forward with those conditions.
Okay, that's a motion to approve the plat, right? Motion to approve the site plan with the conditions that we already stated. And is there a second? Oh, second. Seconded by Brandon Self. The motion was by Richard Lane, seconded by Brandon Self. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. All those opposed? Okay, so that's approved with conditions. And they have to come back for a compliance hearing. And you can go on to the selectmen to show them your plat there and see what they say about it. And that's it.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have a date on that?
It's 2 weeks, you have to come back in 2 weeks, right?
Oh, you have to come back whenever you're ready.
When can we notice? For the-
Which select?
Just going next week. Next Monday, we're gonna come on Monday? No, Wednesday. Wednesday.
We have more business. We have more business.
Yeah, not too much. Not too much. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, but yeah. That's a long meeting. I mean, throw away. 50 feet, yeah. You're right, I forgot. I'll wait till they come back or, yeah, we all aren't here right now, but yeah, when they come back, we'll do that motion.
Your meeting's not over.
No, the meeting's not up. We have other business to discuss.
They do,
So,
yeah.
so is landscaping a part of those conditions, or like what we talked about? with
Yeah,
the-
no, it's not, because the landscape was waived, and they have landscaping on both sides.
I get that, but I would just curious that I thought that was a discussion between the board and that.
Discussion on the board level, it didn't take place in our deliberation there, if that's what you're getting at there, but we had already discussed it in the prior
But
meeting.
if a member of the community requests that, doesn't it have to be at least addressed and say, are we gonna do this or not?
No, it doesn't, no, not when the board is deliberating,
What's
Oh,
that?
it is.
not when the board is deliberating a motion. A motion, the public hearing is closed and there's no more input from the.
I know, but I had requested it before, so when you requested, how come when you say we'll get to that later, but then it never got done? I'm just curious, it's just an interesting process question.
Well, it's a process question, but it has no teeth to it. The member of the public can request anything they want, but the planning board, whether they discuss it or not, is up to the planning board.
So you can ignore, like, if someone says, I'd like this to be discussed, and you say, oh, I just don't feel like you just don't do it.
Actually, yeah, that could happen, but,
Well, I don't happen. I mean,
We need alternates.
uh,
We need alternates.
I mean, because like,
All of our communities.
We need.
because when I asked that question, I was told to me like, well, we'll get to that later, don't worry about it. And then I brought it up again, and then it was, don't worry, we're gonna deliberate that, and then you go right into the condition. So that's just, that seems like a very, after we have talked about transparency, that's a very interesting way to handle it.
Yeah.
well, had the planning board not given a waiver on the landscaping in the prior meeting, then yeah, you might have had a point there, but the planning board had already given a waiver on it, voted on it with a motion.
But it can still be discussed.
It could be discussed,
So
it
you
could
just
be,
ignore it.
but it would have no teeth to it.
It has no teeth because you don't want to have. That, I mean, that's insane.
That could be.
Well, it's not could be, it is, because you literally sat there and told me, don't worry, we'll discuss it later. And so it's really crazy. It's like that's unbelievable.
Well, sorry, we overlooked it maybe in your
Well,
regard.
that's not a so sorry overlooking, because it's an overlooking is you're not listening to what the public is asking. That's incredible.
In your opinion.
Well,
In my opinion,
People ask for waivers all the time.
I wasn't asking for a waiver, I was simply asking to say, oh, it can be treated, landscaping, exactly. Then I was told, don't worry about it, we'll discuss that later. There was never even a discussion. No one said, listen, we're not gonna move forward with this, we're not gonna do it. It was just, well,
that Brandon did say that he wanted to.
well, but these guys also have a history of, yeah, they have that, but there's nothing that says landscaping in it, so they can literally just leave it as.
She's telling you she brought the landscaping up and asked.
No,
Brad about it.
no, what I'm saying is that I was concerned, but I brought it up to him because he said this surface is not amenable to landscaping. So I'm sitting here during the meeting, thinking, if I lived over here, I would like to see something there. I would like to see something there too, other than just cars. flat parking. I'm thinking, how can they do it? But if they can't remove the parking spaces, so I think that's something you should understand.
Well, will be brought up. I'm very intrigued
Yeah.
as to the explanation that I'm just receiving now, which is, well, who you, we'll discuss it later, then I'll just ignore you.
Those are your words, not mine. And the meeting is over. We decided as a planning
Well,
board.
that's the time it's over, but
Yeah.
the words are right there in
What you do?
the conversation, so that's incredible.
Yeah, that's right.
That's incredible.
It is.
Right.
We have another motion to do on that.
Oh, yeah.
Beverly gets done over there.
I hope Aaron judged.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't hear what you said. I didn't hear what you said.
I said, I hope Aaron judged him and run you. He
Oh.
hit one and he gave it.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, so like, he's got 50 years, and then with this, it's like they're saying,
He
this
doesn't use still.
if there's nothing in the plan that says this was landscape, so they don't have to do it.
Hold on.
I hope I'm seeing people who look at, well, look at these guys.
I really was I not told that.
Yeah.
That is. All of it.
It's all important stuff. Pretty much have it.
So it's all of it. The
Great job.
responsibility of
Hard work.
Yeah.
is-
Have a great night.
There's another thing too.
I know, I want to take.
Jess,
I just want to-
Just slam the door.
We've got some more business to do here, and that has to do with the field. It has to do with the field that we're there, and we wanted to make a recommendation to the selectmen that either they put a removable fence on that, and it's the west field.
Cushioning for what? the
Or
sledding.
cushioning for that sledding hill there, because it was a concern, and it's a recreation area anyway.
I want to say something about cushioning.
Go ahead.
You can get a broken neck hitting the cushion.
You can what?
You could get a broken neck hitting a
Oh,
cushion.
probably so, but you can get a broken.
I don't,
walking across that
wouldn't
floor,
move
right?
the cushioning. Boo.
No, you know, like it's, well,
No.
so you don't want to make that recommendation? Well,
I'd rather see a flat like a dog door than
well,
it would open and let him go right on through.
I just think a section of removable fence right there.
Yeah,
so let's just then make that the motion, a section of removable fence as a recommendation by the planning board. So it wouldn't inhibit sledding on that west
Two
field.
sections of fence. You have kids trying to channel into one section.
oh, well, I don't know how wide that is.
I don't either.
We can't really stipulate how much fence they have to take down or anything like that. We can make a recommendation that some part of that fence can be removable to allow sledding in the wintertime and use of that field.
Yeah.
So that should be the motion. So anybody wants to make the motion?
So moved.
Okay, Michael York makes the motion that a portion of the fence on the west field by the sledding hill, recommendation that some portion of it be temporary, I guess is what we're trying to say, to allow sledding on that field in the wintertime.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the motion by Michael York and seconded by whom? Seconded by Jane, seconded by Jane. Is there any further discussion?
I had York and Brendan.
Oh, Brandon, did you second?
I seconded
Oh,
it
oh,
first before
oh,
he
he-
started.
oh, okay, Brandon seconded. Okay, sorry about that. Then is there any further discussion? All those in favor, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, so that, we can just, little memorandum to the selectmen we can do. That brings up to, let's see, now, we have. First up is that letter of support, yeah, for the Swansea Center sidewalk extension. That sounds like a pretty good thing to do over there. Need more sidewalk heading toward, I think it's towards the bridge, isn't it, down there? Yep.
It's the next section from Cedar to Crescent. We're applying for grants, so all the letters we can get supporting the application for the grant are
Okay,
welcome.
and has everyone seen it? And read it, or do you want me to read it out loud?
I haven't seen it. Where is it?
Near the end.
Just need it back. Right after the,
On the backside.
Want me to just read it?
Oh, I feel like I've been through a ball game. I feel like a ball.
A strange choice of words there.
yeah, it's right.
So,
On the backside of the ball.
Oh, I must have it. Okay.
that's the one I'm going to sign.
Yeah, I forgot to print up an extra one. I'll scan it and I send them the electronic copy anyway.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So if everyone is in agreement with this recommendation about the sidewalk, then we need a motion to authorize the chairman to sign it. So who made that motion? I don't know. I think,
Wait a minute, hold on.
okay,
Why does it say include the construction on side street to approximately Crescent Drive? Approximately?
Well, yeah, because we don't know how.
they don't know how far it'll go.
We don't know how far it'll go.
They don't know how much money they're gonna have,
Yeah.
how far they can put it,
Oh.
from what I understand.
I see.
Plus, I think.
I thought they had talked about putting it down to
Kind
the
of
gym.
dips into that area.
And that too, yeah.
Yeah, we're not sure
configuration of
exactly
the
how
land.
far the budget will stretch
Mhm.
for this project yet. Because ultimately we would like to extend the sidewalk all the way to the bridge. The phase following this one will be the one where trees need to be removed and grading needs to happen, and that will be a very expensive portion. But this one should be relatively simple. I don't think we'll be removing any trees. I don't think there's any significant grading that needs to occur. So that's why it's approximately to keep it a little bit loose, because again, we don't know how far they're gonna let us go.
Where the sign.
If we can get 5 feet further, we're gonna go 5 feet further.
This is a letter of support for the application, the grant application.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I got.
Okay. I get it.
Was there a
Okay.
second by someone?
We didn't even have a motion. Anybody make that motion?
I'll move
Yes,
this.
Mr. Long did.
Oh, yes, you did. Okay, yes.
Steve did, I'll second it.
That's seconded by Jane. Is there any further discussion? And all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, then we'll do that.
I gotta keep track of these.
Next order of business is site plan review regulations, aquifer protections, and we have some comments from council on that. And I have it here. Okay. Oh, okay. And they actually, they're just suggesting that we change in the first paragraph. It says, if after review and comment by the Conservation Commission, planning board, the planning board determines that potential damage to an underlying aquifer or wetland protection or wellhead protection area would result from the proposed use, then the following additional items may be required by the planning board. And I think those are good changes. That really makes a big difference there. That's just what it should be, I think, anyway. Everybody else does too? Yep.
Good.
Then I don't even know if we need a motion for that because we'll be,
So moved.
make a motion. Motion by Jane to change the language to what council has
Section 8.
decided, and seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
One question, when the insertion of the for planning board. Or excuse me, it is.
It's there, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, excuse me.
They're already getting late.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, and we will use that language when we go and update our site plan review regulations. And zoning,
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I need to ask Sarah, do you want the change in the language to be inserted in the minutes or not? I mean, we are referring to a change in the language, but there isn't anything in the minutes unless I put that in. Is that what?
I don't know that it's necessary because it's part of the packet.
It's up to you.
and we were discussing something that was indicated on the agenda anyway. Part of it,
Oh, I could just change the section, the part that they changed, not do the whole
Yeah,
thing.
I wouldn't put the whole thing.
and add that paragraph in there. Yeah, might as
Put it
well,
in.
just be
All right,
specific.
I'll add
If
it.
someone else is looking years to come and
Yes. How did that
find out,
happen?
yeah, what the heck was that? How'd they do that?
Okay.
And let's see, we have zoning ordinance amendments for 2023.
So these are merely ideas that we have been passing around at town hall and observations coming through the zoning ordinance as it stands. I would not recommend making more than 5 amendments for 2023. So I've just put this out there as a starting place for you all to discuss, which perhaps won't happen this evening.
No, we'll take it home and look it over.
Yeah.
And think about it.
I'm going to make a comment too. The board of selectmen were not happy with the length of the amendments that were proposed in the
Boy, did I get put on the spot, didn't I?
22 warrant. So you might want to consider that when you're looking at these.
Yeah, I took a lot of heat on that last year because I go to a lot of the selectmen's meetings and they just hammer me.
Yeah, they did not.
And I
want-
said, I can't speak to me, I can't speak.
It is too many.
The voting
Wait a
public
minute.
gets confused, there's too many,
Yeah.
it's better to have 3 and
Yeah.
thoroughly explain
Yeah.
than to have 12.
And that was partly Matthew too, you wanted to get things situated at this,
Before
that,
you
and
left,
you
yeah.
want to go get done there.
Anyway,
It was too long, way too long.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, it's-
Yeah, that's what, don't take this as the list of what we're
Yeah,
doing.
we're just picking it.
This is direction.
Just picking some out of there. And any other business, that may be required? And if not, motion to adjourn is in order. Okay, motion to adjourn by Richard Lane. Is there any further, second by Brandon, any other discussion? All those indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No one ever opposes that. I figured Jane would.